I want to welcome you to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. I know you're thinking, wait a minute, that's not exactly the name as before. Well, we're going to start off here. We got our warning here. Please be aware that this is a show intended for adults. I don't know if we're going to swear a lot or anything, but sometimes we feel like we should. We just want to make sure that YouTube understands that this is a show for adults. Anyhow, enough about that. No, we have officially, we're announcing as of this episode, we're announcing the name change to Retro Rogues. That's going to be our new show title going forward. We've got a new logo, which is kind of fun. We're going to be showcasing here in just a second once we make sure everyone gets the message about the warning. My name is Dave Beatty. I am one of your hosts. For the last, getting on close to 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. Worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, things like Justice League of America, worked on the X-Men, Grifter. I'm starting to drone on and on. A lot of fun things that I actually saw in the Crisis event actually over the last week, but we'll get into that soon enough. I want to welcome, welcome back. I want to welcome my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. He's back here. Please, Eric, tell the folks either watching or listening at home a little bit about what you've done as a creative professional.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am Eric Alexander, otherwise known as Base God 14, Base God 14. I am the chief financial officer of a small production company in Arizona called Bad Bob Productions. I'm also the associate producer of a feature-length film called Occupants, which features Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo and is currently available for free streaming on Tubi.
Very cool. All right, so we want to go ahead and segue into our pop culture news segment.
We want to talk about our internal news first, right?
That's right, because I am jumping ahead of myself as I always do. Anyhow, yeah, so this is our new logo for the Retro Rogues. This, of course, is the Retro Rogues live show. We're going to be as of this show, this is going to be our new name. Moving forward, we're going to use this to basically brand everything. I'm happy with the new name. I think it's pretty cool. It's something that Eric and I came up with together. Actually, I think you suggested this originally, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure we kind of kept the two other shows. So we have you've been involved with two previous shows, which is of course Rogues Radio, which has been what we've been using as our branding. But then there's also the retrospective show that you do. And so I wanted to make sure that we kind of incorporated both of those existing brands into what we're doing now, which is a little bit different because the original intention of this show was that we were doing sort of a live broadcast of us recording our podcast, our audio podcast, and we were going to kind of show you the behind the scenes of us going through that process and doing it. Well, the audio show is currently suspended. So in my mind, it didn't make sense to continue with radio because we weren't really an audio podcast anymore. So that was part of my reasoning there.
Right. So, and then we're going to work on some new graphics. I was hoping to have a little bit more ready by this episode, but as life would have it, things don't always go as planned. But I want to show a couple of the different things that we're working on here. So we're working on some new avatars, kind of some digital representations or characters we're going to be introducing into the show. This is one of them. I'm not going to say a lot about them. I'm just going to show the images here real quick, just so people can kind of see some of the fun things we're working on. So we're going to have some fun graphics and some different things coming up here pretty soon. So that'll be really cool. But anyhow, I want to let everybody know the visual facelift of the show has begun.
Obviously, we still have a couple of things, like our warning there still says Rogues Radio Live. I'll make sure to get that changed. But yeah, we're in transition now, and we'll be going over to this brand. Anybody who's watching can see that the logo is up there in the corner now. It has replaced the Rogues Radio Live, and now says Retro Rogues with our new logo there.
Very cool. Okay, so if that's good, do we want to go ahead and move into our pop culture news segment?
All right. Did you want to lead off on this one, or do you want? I thought you had an article you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, here. I do. Let me go ahead. If you will, let's see. If you will share the screen, we'll get into what I want to talk about here real quick. So this actually broke yesterday. Yeah, that's when I read it. And I thought it'd be worth discussing. So there were a lot of different Marvel TV productions that had been announced, and I was curious what was going on with them. Like there was a Hellstrom show they were working on. There was like a Ghost Rider spinoff show out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which looked pretty good. And there was some animated shows that were supposed to be in development too. And I hadn't heard anything about it for a little while. And so I started kind of, poking around the internet, and I came across this story on Deadline here. Basically, it just says that Marvel Television, as we've known it in the past decade, will soon be no more, with its slate dwindling over the past year and its head, Jeff Loeb, set to depart. The television-focused Marvel division will be phased out. The Marvel TV projects that are currently in production will continue, but any further development is being scrapped. As a result, a significant portion of the unit's staff are being laid off, which always sucks, sources said. The executives impacted are said to include Court Lane, Marcia Griffin, Mark Ambrose, Tom Lever, and Amy Carlson. And I'm not gonna sit here and just read the whole thing. You can definitely check it out over here on Deadline. But among the things to be noted, that includes the announced 4 animated series in the live-action Hellstrom for Hulu, the last season of ABC's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which will still be made. Other Marvel TV staffers are being reassigned, sources said. The decision has been to complete Marvel TV projects that are currently in production, but not continue with any further development. So I was curious how this was going to shake out, because when it was announced that, Kevin Feige had all those, you remember I guess this kind of segues into streaming wars a little bit too, but how Kevin Feige had all those different, Disney Plus shows, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, such on and so forth. He had all those shows, and I was wondering, it's like, well, how is that going to work? Like, are there actually two kind of competing television production entities? Like, there's the Kevin Feige wing, and then there's like the other wing over here with Jeff Loeb. Because, I knew Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was winding down, but they still had shows like Runaways. They still had Cloak and Dagger, which Cloak and Dagger's also been canceled. And I had been seeing rumors about another season of Punisher on Netflix, and I was like, well, there's no way they're going to do that. Right. And so I was kind of looking for information, and I ran across this. So unfortunately, those of you hoping for another season of Punisher on Netflix, this story pretty much puts the nails in those coffin. There's not going to be another one. Basically, this entire division of Marvel TV is basically going away. And the only active TV productions, and that includes all the animated stuff too, apparently as well. Because there's actually, there's the What If show being produced for Disney Plus. So I think all of this stuff is just going to start rotating over to Disney Plus. There might be some shows that'll roll out, on, obviously Disney, ABC controlled channels, but from here and there. But basically any of the cool things that we've been hearing about that had been, in development, basically it's done. And as a part of this too, as the story relates, some Marvel staff or TV staffers are going to be reassigned, but it sounds like a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to lose their jobs as well. So,
It sounds like what's happened is that basically the movie division has taken over TV, and TV is going to be limited to Disney Plus. That's right. My take on it. It's basically, like you said, Kevin Feige, the Disney Plus team. He's using the movie people essentially to make his shows. That's why when they always used to do these big announcements of the big slate of all the new Marvel movies coming out. If you recall, the last time they did that, which I think was at D23, last time they did that, Kevin Feige was talking mostly about these TV shows. He was teasing about these movies. That's when we first heard about maybe Blade coming back and all this other stuff. But there were no dates on any of that stuff. The stuff that he was heavily promoting was actually the television shows for Disney Plus. So it seems to me that basically Marvel Studios has taken over all the television development. That's probably why you're seeing this happening. That's my take on it.
Right. So, yeah. So there's some pop culture news I thought was kind of relevant. and it answered some questions for me, and then probably some of our viewers or listeners, if you were curious what was going to be happening with a lot of the different things you'd either heard rumored about or things that had been previously announced. I think they're pretty much dead in the water. And then on a side note, I don't have a particular article to reference, but on a side note, in addition to that, I had some different people asking me about Flash, the Flash show over at Warner Brothers. And as of right now, the Flash has been basically taken off of the schedule.
Really?
Yeah,
I
some
hadn't
people.
heard that.
Yeah, it's basically been taken off of the schedule. This was kind of recent breaking stuff, and people have been asking me about it because at one point they were going to try and do something with Flashpoint, and then people were kind of asking me because I worked on Flashpoint Wonder Woman. It's like, do you think we'll see Flashpoint Wonder Woman in it? And there had been some rumors that they might do something with that. And, that'd be really cool because I might get to see my name on the big screen for 50 seconds or half a second or something. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. But no, Flash has been taken off of the schedule. So I think that Flash movie is probably, I don't think there's anything going to be happening with it anymore. And by the time that something might happen with it, I think it's going to be a completely different, non-connected property now. I don't think the DC EU expanded universe or whatever they're calling it, I don't think that's going to exist as it has previously. But that's just conjecture and rumor on my part, though.
Well, I think they're definitely going through some changes there. There's no doubt about that. So
yeah,
we'll see how that all pans out. So that kind of leads to, well, which direction we want to go into. Since we're talking about DC, should we talk about Crisis or Wonder Woman?
Let's talk about Wonder Woman.
All right, I've got the trailer queued up here. Give me just one moment here. Now, you did see the trailer?
Yes, I did. I've watched it several times.
Several times. I can understand why. I can definitely understand why you might want to watch this several times. So, overall, what was your impression of the trailer?
I'm looking forward to it. I love 80s period type stuff to begin with. I love the song that's in the trailer. So I loved all the graphics that they used to set it up. I mean, for me, this was pretty much a home run for me. I mean, I love the first Wonder Woman movie. I love that sequence in No Man's Land. That's still one of the best action sequences I've seen in a comic book movie for me, and I'd say since probably Winter Soldier. But no, yeah, this was, I really liked this. There's one thing I found a little odd. I don't. Towards the end of the trailer, they show her in the Kingdom Come.
We're going to show the trailer, so we
okay,
can talk about specifics in a second. I just wanted your overall impression of it.
No, I really liked it. What were your impressions of it?
I liked it as well. We kind of try to not use audio because we're afraid of copyright flags, and obviously the music from this particular trailer would probably get us a copyright flag immediately. But I just want to say that was one of my favorite parts of the trailer. Doing that music, that particular song, and the way they did it, it really gave me that 80s feel, because I grew up in the 80s and I have total nostalgia for the 80s and miss the 80s in a lot of ways. So the choice of music, I think a lot of people have said this, the choice of music almost makes the trailer. Unfortunately, we won't be playing the audio. We'll just be giving our commentary because that seems to be the easiest way to do this without getting the copyright flags and getting struck, because it seems like the audio seems to be a big issue when it comes to YouTube and doing these trailer reviews. Although I see plenty of other people do it and they're fine. I see other people do it and they get flagged. So to be safe, we do our commentary with no audio. So I'll go ahead and I'll start it. We've got this sort of opening shot that I'm guessing is just oh, we got pictures of it, right? Okay, so now this is something a lot of people have been talking about as far as people that are a little bit worried and critical, this is the actress that's going to be playing a major character in this film, and she's mostly known for comedy. So there are some concerns about whether she can pull this off. She's been playing Cheetah, right? So
Yeah.
there are some concerns about whether she can pull this off or not. This particular scene I thought worked okay. This is obviously before her transformation. I feel like they're kind of going, kind of like the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman route, where she's going to be kind of this meek nobody, kind of thing, and then she's going to turn into this sort of like, badass. That's what I'm thinking. Based on this little interaction, where the two of them are obviously friends. We've got the picture of oh no, I'm messing up on
Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor. Okay, obviously this is from World War One. They're still having their little talk. Everything's pleasant. They're good. I like the way they're doing the logos too.
Yeah, I did too. I like these graphics. It really set the mood.
I enjoyed that, and then the way they did this. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I like it. 1984, and it just really feel. And I think at this point the music's really kicking up too, because the first like 10 seconds or so there's no music, and then the music starts. In this trailer, and of course, that's why a lot of people want to watch this video over and over again. Gal Gadot is just gorgeous, just absolutely stunning woman. At a mall scene. Now this little image we had before. There's better images later. But this is the villain, I believe, right? This is our baddie.
Well, yeah, I mean he'll play a villainous role. We'll have to wait for a little bit more information for the movie, but if I remember correctly, that this is Maxwell Lord, and Maxwell Lord in the comics, if you read them, Max wasn't really a villain until later on in the DC universe. He was seen as sort of like a shady character because of the role that he played in basically taking the Justice League of America and setting them up as Justice League International, and then putting them kind of on the world stage. If you read the Keith Giffen, the Giffen DeMatteis JLI run, which I would highly recommend to anyone. So I don't immediately see Max Lord as a villain. He may be that in this movie and portrayed that way, but to me, Max Lord is one of the people who helped to, organize the Justice League. One of my favorite versions of the Justice League. So I don't immediately see him as a villain.
That's interesting. So we got this little action sequence in the mall with Wonder Woman there. Looks very cool. I like her outfit.
Yeah, it's a little bit brighter and shinier.
And yeah, this is my understanding. It doesn't mean I'm correct, but my understanding was that he's playing the main villain.
No, that's what I'm saying. He may be the villain, but it's interesting too, because with these TV segments that they're showing with him, it reminds me more of Glorious Godfrey and the Legends miniseries, which was in the 80s. And Glorious Godfrey is actually a new god. He was actually from Apocalypse. He was a servant of Darkseid, and he basically was on sort of like a PR, was running a PR campaign, and kind of won people to his side, and then turned them against the heroes. So, but that when I saw this, that's what I thought. I thought of Glorious Godfrey. I didn't think of Max Lord. But anyhow, go ahead.
Gotcha. They could be combining different themes and different character story arcs. They do that quite a bit when it comes to the movie and TV adaptations. So
yeah,
she actually threw her tiara, huh? So I didn't.
I thought that was cool.
I noticed that the first time, because that's a very Linda Carter Wonder Woman thing.
Yeah, which I thought was awesome.
I do like the outfit quite a bit. And she's thinking about Steve Trevor, I think. Now we kind of get some rumblings, I guess, of maybe some issues with the Cheetah character. She might be not quite what she seems, which we know she's not, because she's going to be a villain. Now we got Steve Trevor back, and a lot of people are speculating, how do we have Steve Trevor back?
I honestly don't have a clue.
Really?
I'm gonna wait for the movie. There's any
Okay.
number. There's any number of things that could be going on here. I mean, Max Lord in certain versions of the comics has the ability to kind of mind control people. That could be Maxwell Lord pretending to be Steve Trevor, and creating that image in her mind, and that could be a like an ultimate betrayal kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to pull this all together, but because Diana has a link to the gods of the ancient world. I mean, there could be magic involved. It could be any number of things.
You said you want to find out from the movie, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. But Midnight's Edge has reported a plot leak from a test screening where they basically gave the entire plot of the movie. And to me, it's interesting. Their take, I think, was that I won't say they didn't like it. I think that they were concerned about it because they admitted the person who gave them the leak hated it. They hated the test screening and were very angry, and that's why they contacted Midnight's Edge in the first place. The Midnight's Edge people, from what I've seen of their coverage, they're like, well, this is one guy's opinion. Yes, the plot kind of sounds a little weird. I can say it involves magic. I'll just say that it's a magical thing.
That would make sense.
Which, like I said, to me would make sense because the Wonder Woman is a character based on myth. So if you're going to throw in magic, that's fine. I mean, she is magic. I mean, how did Wonder Woman even come to be? She's in the movie continuity. She's the daughter, basically, of the god Ares and her mother, right? So and she's like the only Amazon that was actually has a father, right? All the other Amazons are like built out of clay or something like that, right? So
no, it actually all the Amazons were born. The original origin of Wonder Woman is she was sculpted from clay.
Yeah, but they changed that in the movie. In the movie, she's the daughter of Ares. So you have to be careful because the continuities are not the same from the comics to the different properties. Sometimes they're not even the same from one comic to one comic because they've revamped and redone these things a billion times. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and what they did is in the movie they say that the being sculpted from clay, that's what she believes, and it turns out she was actually born. This actually comes out of the new 52 version of Wonder Woman, is when they said that she was actually born, because prior to that, she had been sculpted basically from clay. But all the other Amazons...
That's the origin I always remember, is her being sculpted from clay. But they obviously changed that in the movie.
Right. And in all the other Amazons, they were born, and they've been on Paradise Island, and most of them are basically immortal. So they actually go back to ancient times. The only new, quote-unquote, child that ever existed on Paradise Island was Diana. All the rest of them have been basically adults since they came to Paradise Island or Themyscira. I'm a big Wonder Woman nut, and I worked on Wonder Woman, so bear with me. There's going to be a lot of factoids thrown around.
Yeah, but my point I'm trying to make is that they've redone the origins. You know what I mean? Yes, I always went with the clay thing. That's what I grew up always thinking, and that was the story that was near and dear to my heart. But they changed it in the movie. The movie that they didn't do that. So, so here we got him again. We don't know what he's holding here, but this is kind of related. To anybody who wants to look into it, the plot leak, it kind of doesn't confirm it. It just kind of goes into that, what he might be holding there. Got some chaos scene here. Looks like that's still from the mall. Steve Trevor's obviously displaced in time. There's some comments he makes that make it pretty obvious that he's not just he's kind of like he's the old Steve Trevor. He's the World War I Steve Trevor. He hasn't just been hanging out all this time.
Right, which is good because in the Wonder Woman television series, the way they did that time jump, because in the television series, she was active during World War II and then she went back.
Yeah.
And then Steve Trevor stayed in America. And then when she had to basically sort of returned again in the modern day, which at that point was the 70s, early 80s. And then it was actually I think it was the grandson or great grandson or something of Steve Trevor. And he just happened to look and sound exactly like him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was apparently I was looking into that the other day because they were doing a Wonder Woman marathon on Decades. And Decades is one of those like sub digital channels that some people have. It's free. It's on the air. And I think every Sunday they do like a different marathon of all these different shows, and sometimes they're really obscure shows, like shows that only lasted like one season. Um, but they did one the other night of Wonder Woman, and I was watching like two or three episodes, and it got me on this, that the Linda Carter Wonder Woman kick, and I looked some of that information up, and apparently what happened was when they decided to renew Wonder Woman for the second season, the studio basically said, "We'll do this on one condition: get rid of this period stuff because this period stuff is costing us an arm and a leg. Put it into modern times." So they had to figure out a way to do that, and that's what they came up with. So that was the reason why it was a production issue. They just didn't like doing a period piece because period pieces are expensive. So they didn't want to keep it in World War II anymore. So we got a fight here. Is this kind of like a callback to Superman and even X-Men? Is this at the White House? Do we know?
I'm not sure because this could be Max Lord. I'm not sure if even because this guy behind her could be him. I'm not sure.
Let's look at these uniforms a little bit. I can't tell if those are Secret Service uniforms or not.
I don't think they are.
The uniform Secret Service. I need to look at their uniforms to compare it, but it's very official looking, whatever this place is.
Yeah.
Anytime I see an assault on the White House, I always think of Superman 2. And then I also think of how X-Men did, a brilliant homage to that, because we know Bryan Singer was a huge Superman fan. And obviously that scene in, what is it? That's X-Men 2, right?
Yeah,
where they actually have, gosh, I'm doing terrible on names today. Nightcrawler does the assault on the White House. It's a classic scene, and I always feel like I know it's a huge throwback to Superman 2. So I don't know if that's what's going on here, but that's what it reminds me of. And I don't know if that's the case. Like you said, it could just be another character's place or whatever. So,
well, and that's Steve Trevor behind her. So,
yeah, that's a pretty cool scene right there.
I
always love the using the bracelets with the bullets and stuff like that. That's very iconic to me, having grown up on the Linda Carter Wonder Woman. All right, and we can see there's a little transition there with our cheetah character. What's her real name? What's her name?
It's Kristen Wiig.
No, not the actress. The character's name.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember.
Really?
I don't remember.
So anyway, obviously we can see a transition is going on here. This again, to me, this is very much Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman. That's how I'm looking at it. She's making this transition where now she's starting to be, sexier, more confident, that kind of thing, which is going to, I think, go into her transition to become this villain. That's just my take. No spoilers or anything like that. That's not part of my spoiler material. That's speculation. Nice little scene there with Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman. Her using the last. See, these scenes look like Secret Service to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be. It could be the White House. I mean, I could see what you're saying. It could very well be.
Little throwback to when she was a kid. That was actually one of the things I really enjoyed in the first movie because I went with my kids, and I did enjoy the flashbacks or the pictures of her when she was growing up. So it'll be nice that they have a little of that in this movie as well, because I did enjoy that. But she is running, and again, I do really like the outfit. I think it looks awesome, but it's hard for anything to look bad on Gal Gadot. I think I'm not sure if that's possible. Is it? So
probably not.
She is a striking woman. It looks like we are going to get some Paradise Island shots. I don't know if this could be part of the flashback, but maybe we'll get some new stuff too. Yeah, there's some good looking action sequences here. That's kind of it's pretty cool. That made it look like maybe that Navy ship was actually shooting at Wonder Woman. We'll see if that's. They always do a lot of misleading editing in trailers, so we'll have to see if that's what's going on or not.
Yeah, this shot here I thought was pretty cool. Her actually like riding the lightning. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
So this is probably one of the more I don't want to say controversial, but it's definitely one of the more. There are people that are divided on their opinions of this. What do you think of this particular outfit?
Well, it's the Alex Ross Kingdom Come Wonder Woman armor. Like that's what it is. So I think it looks pretty cool. I'm the only part in this is just I thought it was weird. They show her kind of shedding the wings, and then the next clip right after that, she's in it and she's got the wings and she's deflecting a bullet. I thought it was a little odd because you're showing it backwards. It's like they should have shown her, deflecting the bullet and then cut to this thing with the wings falling away. And then, you know what I mean? It would have it was a little odd, but no, I like, I like the Alex Ross, we're seeing a lot of the Kingdom Come iconography working their way into other things. We've got her wearing the armor here in Wonder Woman 84. We've got, of course, Brandon Routh in the Kingdom Come Superman costume in Crisis right now. We've got Kevin Conroy in the Kingdom Come Batman, sort of mechanized exoskeleton thing. So they're just taking these really kind of fan favorite classic, kind of suits, and they're beginning to integrate them into other things. So I don't have any issues with the outfit because, like I said, to me, it's just one of Wonder Woman's classic, kind of outfits. I wish they would have waited to Kingdom Come to do it. I mean, it's going to be it's a little disjointed me to see all these different suits running around out of context. But no, I don't have.
They do. That's what the television and movie divisions do. I think that's their job. I think that's in their contract that they have to do that. No context is allowed, Dave. That's not. No. We can't.
You know what? As long as it isn't as bad as Steel, we're doing okay. That's where I draw the line. What did you think of the suit? Were you familiar with it at all?
Yeah, I Kingdom Come is one. I've told you, Alex Ross and Bruce Timm are my two favorite comic book artists. So, I have Kingdom Come. I own it, the thing is you always worry is how sometimes when you do something in a comic book, how well will it translate into a movie? We were talking about X-Men earlier. Remember, that was a big argument with X-Men. That's why none of them have their iconic suits in the movies, right? It's because they said, oh, well, that's not going to translate. You don't want to see Wolverine in yellow spandex. Well, I actually do, but the question becomes, will it work? And that's not just up to me. I mean, that's up to the costume designers and can they adapt this and make it right? So my initial reaction to it is I don't hate it. I don't love it either. I don't think it looks as good as it looks in the comic. That's my take on it. I like the other one. I like the classic Wonder Woman outfit. I like the way it looks like they did some like kind of subtle changes to it that I like. And I like seeing her in the iconic Wonder Woman outfit. That's what I like personally. I have no problem with the Kingdom Come stuff, but I think it looked better in the comic than it does on screen, at least right now, of what I'm seeing.
All right.
But I like the iconic Wonder Woman outfit, So that's always going to be my bias. I grew up on Super Friends, and that's always what I'm going to like, So.
Right. And I like this little bit where she's walking around and she's telling him it's all art, and he starts to inspect the trash can. I thought that was kind of fun.
And that obviously tells us that he is out of place. He's out of time. This is the World War I Steve Trevor. He has been brought back somehow. Like I said, I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say magically. That can be in quotes or however you want it. But that is obviously the World War I Steve Trevor. He hasn't been in cryonic suspension or something the last, what is it? Gosh, this is supposed to be 84. End of World War II World War I was in 1918. So, yeah, he hasn't been on ice all that time. So,
a few years. A few.
Yeah, and by the way, that was one thing I was really concerned about But honestly, the plot leak that I heard, a lot of people don't like it. To me, I'm like, okay, well, the plot leak I heard, then I'm okay with Steve Trevor being back, because the thing with me is one of the things I really loved about the first Wonder Woman movie was the way it treated Steve Trevor.
Hmm.
They very easily could have made Steve Trevor this sort of hapless idiot that Wonder Woman is constantly saving and rescuing, and is kind of a bumbling fool, and kind of
Right.
quote unquote payback for all the times that women have been portrayed like that in cinema over the last 100 years. But they didn't do that. And I really appreciated that. They made Steve Trevor a really compelling and heroic character, to the point that he's really the big hero at the end. He's the one who makes the big sacrifice and saves all these people,
Yeah.
not Wonder Woman. And I thought that was amazing. I really liked that. So, of course, having a heroic death, you're always like, well, if they bring the character back, are you negating the heroic death? And in this particular case, I think it'll be okay. I'm hoping it'll be okay. Just based on the information that I've heard. Again, that's from Midnight's Edge. If anybody's interested in spoilers and stuff like that. And also remember, you always have to treat that kind of stuff with a grain of salt, because this is just some guy who came into them and said, "I saw the test screening." He could have made it all up. So,
Right.
so you always have to take that with a grain of salt. But I'm thinking it'll be okay.
Well, and I really like the dynamic between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. Like they played off of each other really well. And I did like the fact that he was a war hero. He wasn't a bumbling buffoon who needed to be saved. I mean, I really liked his portrayal of Steve Trevor, and I'm just excited they found a way to bring him back. So, let me put it this way: after having made it through 3 episodes of Crisis, I'm not sure if you can give me a scenario I'm not going to believe. After the stuff I've had to accept. But we'll see. But no, I really like the trailer. It looks good. I'm excited to see the movie. I thought when I saw the dynamic too between Kristen Wiig and Gal Gadot, when they had that one little scene where they're kind of bantering back and forth, I thought, oh well, if they're going for this kind of thing, I think this will work. Because Kristen Wiig can pull that off. So we'll see. We'll see.
She's probably the element that I'm most concerned about. I have never seen her in anything where I would be convinced of her being an action hero, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, or villain for that matter.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see what that transition is like. Again, I think it's going to be very Michelle Pfeiffer, but Michelle Pfeiffer, I'm just going to say it, I think is a much better actor than she is, and so we'll just see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But we did mention Crisis. So do we want to go into Crisis?
Yeah, we can talk about Crisis now. So, Crisis on Infinite Earths. We don't have a lot of images or anything we're going to show here. Crisis, we are 3 episodes in. I'm not going to throw out a bunch of spoilers, I don't think, because if you haven't seen it, it's worth going back and revisiting it. I will say this. A lot of people, before they started this event, were kind of commenting. They went, it's really cool they're doing this, but it's a shame it's on the CW, lamenting the fact that the CW shows are not very good. The first episode of Crisis, I liked, but I was a little concerned with. It wasn't bad or anything. It was just sort of, I don't know. The second episode was better, and the third episode, like I said, it keeps getting better and better with each episode. They have a lot they're trying to do in 5 parts, and they have a lot of characters. So I'm going to cut them a ton of slack. There's some characters that are probably totally unnecessary, but they have in this because they come from the classic Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline. And they've kept some interesting elements, and they've introduced some interesting ideas. Overall, now that we're basically up to essentially sort of like their winter break until they come back, I'm really enjoying it. I really, really liked. I liked some things I didn't think I was going to like. The Kevin Conroy Batman is a little different than what I was expecting they were going to do. They have successfully subverted my expectations and where I thought we were going to go with the story and what we were going to do with some of the characters. For example, when I kind of had the Kevin Conroy thing kind of spoiled for me by accident because I'm watching these on the CW app instead of watching them, real time on television. And so I kind of had that spoiled for me. And I was like, oh, I really don't like that. But, Kevin Conroy.
Which part did you have spoiled?
Kevin Conroy's Batman is a little different than what I was expecting.
Okay.
I can talk spoilers if we want to throw up a spoiler warning. I know you don't really care about spoilers, but his Batman is a little different than what I was expecting. I was hoping he was just going to be a straight up Kingdom Come version of Batman, but that's not what they've done. It's a little different than that. But Kevin Conroy did such a good job of selling it to me. I bought into it, and I didn't have a lot of issues with it. And I was kind of able to roll with it.
Hey, Dave, I did want to give some attention to some that joined the chat here. I believe she was talking about Wonder Woman. This is Erica Graves.
Yeah.
And she was saying that she loves a good backstory too. And I was asking for a little bit of clarification. And she just said, I just like finding out how and why people are the way they are. And I'm guessing that was in regards to Cheetah and some of that other stuff we were talking about. But I wanted to give her some attention there.
Well, and I was going to say, I know Erica, and we had been chatting, and I told her that she might like Batwoman because all Batwoman is backstory. All it is backstory and revenge. And because it's interesting, because I have watched a lot of the CW shows to get my backstory basically in order. And on Crisis, the first episode, one of my complaints would be with it is that we're spending a lot of time trying to catch people up on things that if they've been watching the shows, they kind of already know. And if they're trying to give context to people that are coming in just for the Crisis event, I don't think they really care. There's a lot of time spent on some stuff. I'm like, good, can we move on? It's like, we get it,
Well, I will say, I personally have always liked the origin stories. Like we were talking about Wonder Woman earlier and how her origin story has changed even in the comics, like we talked about the New 52, but from different mediums, we were talking about television, film, and things like that. There was the classic origin of her being made out of clay. Now they've changed that, at least in the movies, where now she's the daughter of Ares, which I think is kind of interesting and weird. But I can accept it. But I like origin stories. I've always liked origin stories. I think Batman's origin story is obviously classic. Superman's origin story is classic. Spider-Man's origin story is classic. And I realize sometimes people get sick of hearing them over and over again, but I really don't. I like the origin stories,
Right. And but I do want to since we got this picture here, I do want to single out some of the really interesting performances, the characters I'm enjoying the most, seeing translated live action. The actor that they've got playing the Monitor, I really like him. He actually had an interesting moment of sort of his backstory came out actually in the third episode of Crisis, and he delivered a really riveting performance. I was quite struck by him. And you finally get a sense of his motivation of why he's doing this. And I think he's doing a good job. The other two standouts, I'd have to say, the way that they bring Black Lightning into this was interesting. And I really like that actor because of the CW shows, the ones I'm enjoying the most, Black Lightning, I'd have to say, is probably the best for me personally. And then I've really been enjoying Batwoman. I was kind of surprised at it. First couple episodes were a little hit and miss with me, but and there's some stuff I'm not thrilled with, but I've actually been quite enjoying Batwoman. But Black Lightning, I really liked the role that he played and kind of how they brought him in. John Wesley Shipp as the 90s, to me anyway, the classic Barry Allen Flash. He was great in this. And the scene with him I thought was well done. A little hard to watch, but it was well done. But the big standout is Brandon Routh back. I'm sorry, Brandon Routh back as Superman. his Superman scene where he takes on the Supergirl version of Superman was pretty fun. And he just embodies that classic version of Superman so much. I mean,
He
not
looks
just
so
physically,
he looks so swelled up. He look really good in this picture that we have up.
man, some of
He
the
looks
shots,
massive, you know.
some of the flying shots of him. I mean, he is the classic Superman we grew up with in this story. And it's not exactly Kingdom Come. It is a little bit, but it's very much the Chris Reeve. They play the classic Chris Reeve music for him when he
Oh,
gets
nice.
introduced and stuff. I mean, it's cool. I'd have to say that's been my favorite part of this is watching him reprise his role as Superman. And that's why I didn't particularly like the cliffhanger at the end of the third episode, but I
Oh,
don't want to get into spoilers. But um, if you're interested in checking out Crisis, the first episode's a little bit of a slog because they give us a lot of melodrama that I don't know is necessary to set up what's going on. But beyond that, I thought the shows leading up to the Crisis event were good for all the different shows I was watching. I didn't watch any of the Legends stuff. But I did watch all the Batwoman shows leading up to this, which I liked what they did with Batwoman because she basically just gets dropped into the middle of this. She doesn't know who any of these people are. It totally makes sense because the Batwoman show has got nothing to do with what's happening with Crisis, and her initial reaction, what's going on, is pretty priceless. But I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. It's not the greatest superhero television I've ever seen, but I've really been enjoying it, and it's so fun. And like I said, it's like this is such a titanic task because they're not even done, and the sheer number of characters. I will throw this one spoiler out. I didn't even realize they were going to do it, but the Birds of Prey characters showed up from the TV show.
really?
And yeah, the Huntress is on there, and then they have Babs is on there for just briefly, like over like a comm link kind of thing. Sad to say they don't make it. But anyhow, I was kind of when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, wow, that's a pretty big deep dive."
Yeah.
And they're not done. They're not done. And I was, I'm really curious to see what they do with these last two parts coming up in January because I'm kind of hoping, fingers crossed, that they've cast a stuntman to wear the Keaton Batman outfit and we actually see him in the background fighting somebody for half a second. Because it'd be pretty cool to see some different versions of Batman actually fighting along with Batwoman in kind of a fun little sequence. I'm not sure if we're going to get that, but I think there's a slight possibility. So we'll see. But like I said, I've been enjoying it. So
That's cool. And Erica's acknowledging that she does need to see see Batwoman. I haven't seen it either, Erica. So I haven't really been keeping up on any of the CW shows, honestly. But listening to Dave does make me more interested in checking them out. So
I think Erica would definitely like Batwoman because it's a lot of drama. It's a pretty twisted backstory for between two of the characters and what's happening there and sort of the torn allegiances and loyalties and stuff. I mean, and like I said, if you like backstory, that's all Batwoman is. All Batwoman is drama and backstory and revenge. And Batwoman actually has some pretty impressive martial arts stunt sequences in it. I felt like that in the first episode of Crisis when they set her up. I'm not sure who directed the first episode or how much time they spent on it, but I was a little let down with her initial sequence because on her regular show, man, those sequences are amazing. The last episode leading up to Crisis, she's got these baton staff things that she's using now. And the way it was shot, it was almost like in silhouette. And she's going through like this building kind of room to room kind of thing. And it was pretty impressive. So, but I guess that's sort of my take on Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you're interested in this at all, definitely watch it. It's a lot of fun. They're very respectful to all these different characters, which I was very happy with. And I think they do the best with the budget and the time constraints that they have to try and give all of them kind of their due. I've been really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to the finale in January.
What do you think the comic fans will think of this? The people that are big fans of the comic book.
I think the hardcore fans of the Crisis comic book, I think some people will see it for what it is and enjoy it, and then some people will just outright probably hate it. Um, just because they kind of take some liberties kind of here and there, but they kind of had to, you know. Um, I don't know if they, and I was surprised at some of the stuff that they kept pretty true. There was this sequence that I was kind of shocked that they kept almost right from the comic. I was like, wow, I can't believe they kept that, but that's interesting. Um, and then there's kind of some things here and there, you know, that I know will really bug people. But I mean, overall, like I said, I've enjoyed it for what they're doing. I mean, in addition to being an adaptation, sort of, I'm using air quotes, you can't see them, sort of adaptation of Crisis, the thing I think is really neat about this, too, is this is very much a salute to DC Comics on television, and
Yeah.
you know, what they've done over the years, and as well as a lot of the classic movies. The Tom Welling sequence, the Smallville sequence, I thought was really good, and I really enjoyed seeing Tom Welling back as Clark, even if it was for a brief moment. And then the way that they kind of explained it, it kind of made sense, and it worked. I didn't have any issues with it at all. But no, like I said, overall, I've been enjoying it. And like I said, with it being a salute to DC Comics on TV, it's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. I'm not sure if it's going to give me the sort of shock and awe moments I was hoping for. And that they have kind of taken some detours I wasn't expecting and spent some time on some things I probably wouldn't have spent time on. But overall, I've been really enjoying it. So,
Right on. You do the way you talk about it does make me interested in seeing it. Like I said, I haven't been following many of the CW shows. I've seen a few episodes of Flash, a couple episodes of Supergirl. But yeah, you definitely make me more interested in seeing it personally.
I really think you would really enjoy the Superman sequence in the second one. I don't know how you'd feel about what they did with Kevin, but I think you'd definitely like the Superman stuff in the second episode, and I think you'd really like the Flash stuff in the third one. They gave a character a really cool moment, and it was just cool to see him back. So I think you'd like the second and the third one. That's just me.
Right on. I'll definitely need to check it out. I keep saying I'm going to get the app and check some of the stuff out. And I was mentioning off the air that I used to get the CW over the air on my antenna, and I don't get it anymore. It really irritates me. But yeah, I need to check out the app, and then I guess go that route. So are we good on Crisis?
I think so.
All right. Well, this is going to be our last part of the news segment. This is we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Have you seen this trailer?
I have watched this trailer a lot too.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm almost a little surprised at that one. I can understand the Wonder Woman one. That's interesting. So, first off, overall impressions. Did the trailer make you want to see the movie or want to see it more? I mean, where were you coming from the beginning? Because Ghostbusters Afterlife has a lot of baggage with it. There's some controversy about it because of the previous Ghostbuster remake with the female cast. So this is clearly going to be more of a sequel, more of a reboot instead of a remake. Although those terms seem to be interchangeable, they're not really. But you know, it is what it is. But anyway, this is going to be a continuation, more of a true reboot, where they're bringing the franchise back from where it used to be, as opposed to just completely redoing it. So, going into this, before you even saw the trailer, were you interested in seeing this movie?
I was because of some of the things I had read about it. That this is actually was written and directed by Ivan Reitman's son. And of course, Ivan had a huge hand in obviously creating the original Ghostbusters films. And a lot of his ideas are help what informed and take Dan Aykroyd's idea and story and turn it into the version of Ghostbusters that we all know and love. So I felt like that. And it's interesting too, because I think this is very much going to be sort of like not sons and daughters kind of idea, but it is kind of like the next generation, kind of inheriting the Ghostbusters mantle. So when you look at it from that standpoint and you see that, Ivan Reitman's son is kind of inheriting this from his father and kind of carrying it forward, I was like, oh, this is so I was looking forward to it. I do want to do real quick. I'm going to throw out my idea. Some people have heard this before. It was the way to do it in the first place. I don't know why anybody didn't think about it. But, with the female Ghostbusters, and at one point they were talking about a male Ghostbusters team at the same time, what I thought they were originally going to do is basically the original Ghostbusters, there's a line where Bill Murray tells Dan Aykroyd after I forget how many mortgages he puts on his house, and they're walking out of the bank, and he's like, he's like, that interest rate's really high. You didn't even argue with him, And he says the franchise rights alone are going to be worth millions. I felt like the way to do this is the all-female team that they did. They could have just bought a franchise, and they could have been somewhere on the West Coast.
I just want to say this. There's a very active Ghostbusters fan group here locally, in Arizona. I know they do events up north with you guys as well. Very, very good fan group, very supportive of all sorts of charities, very much into the fans. My kids always enjoy seeing them at events and things like that. And there are, these chapters all over, the United States that do the same thing.
Exactly.
And I remember talking to a lot of the original guys, who I don't see as much anymore, but some of the original guys, the guys that were first doing this, the guys who first started this, at least locally in Arizona. And that was the idea. The idea was that these chapters were Ghostbuster franchises, so that kind of in their little headcanon, if you will, they were the Arizona division of the Ghostbusters. They had the Arizona franchise,
Exactly.
as cosplaying fans. And when I was doing the Phoenix Comic-Con Film Festival, we showed a very, very good Ghostbusters fan film that was like cinema quality. I mean, it was really, really good. And if I recall, one of the characters was supposed to be, I think, a descendant of Spangler. And then, but the idea was that they were in Denver. They were the Denver Ghostbusters. They were the Denver franchise. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that it was a great film. I wish I could remember what it was called. I think I still have my copy somewhere, because I kept most of the films that I showed. I kept my copies. I kept the copies myself. Part of the perks of being the film festival director. And, I might need to give a shout out to them on our next show, because it was a really, really good idea. And the way they did it was just really, really good, especially for a fan film. But that was the basic idea. The basic idea is of the franchise, just like you said. And that would have been, in my opinion, a much, much better way to go with the previous Ghostbusters film.
And see, that's what I thought, because what I thought you could do is you have the original Ghostbusters on the East Coast. You could have the female Ghostbuster crew could be on the West Coast. And then we could do this all-male team that they said they wanted to do. They could have been in the Midwest. And then...
Or we could have a team in Arizona. That'd be awesome.
Well, that's true. But the whole point of it is what you do is you have each one of them dealing with a different threat, and kind of how the Marvel Universe interconnected thing, it all leads to one bad, and they all have to come together with the original Ghostbusters, and you get all the different franchises together with the original Ghostbusters, and that's like your three films. You know what I mean? That's how you could do that and have it lead to this big. And then what you could do as well is when they talk about the different branches in the franchises, you could contact the different fan groups, and you could actually show their patches in like a brief little scene, like in the corporate offices.
Yeah.
And you give awesome. A shout out. You give a little shout out to all these groups who've created their own emblems, and they feel like they're a part of it. And I mean,
the funny thing is for the premiere, because I talked to them, they had a bunch of these Ghostbuster groups, including the Arizona one, at the premiere in LA for the previous Ghostbusters film. And they had them, people were already doing the new costumes and things like that. And, they used them for that. You think that would be nice. It's kind of like you think about contrast that to the way that Lucasfilm used to treat the 501st before Disney. I mean, they
Right.
used to do all sorts of stuff for the 501st. They made the 501st canon, you know,
Right.
because it was such a passionate fan group, and because they used to help George Lucas at events all the time, bringing stormtroopers in, because those were 501st guys. Those were not Lucasfilm employees. Those were 501st guys that showed up at all those events, and he made them canon. He big shout out to them. He said, "Okay, that's you guys right behind, Anakin / Darth Vader when he destroys the temple. That's the 501st.
Right.
So
So
yeah, there's a lot of missteps when you think about it with the
yeah.
previous film.
So
And
I think there was. My only point is just I think there was a way to do that and have it work instead of the way that they did it. So I am excited about this film because I think the Ghostbusters is a franchise that's got a ton of potential, and I love the idea of continuing forward with the original Ghostbusters in tow, in some fashion. So I was looking forward to this for those main reasons alone, and so I was looking forward to it already. The original trailer I liked where you saw the Ecto one like in the barn. So I was very curious to see this trailer, and I totally missed it. I didn't realize it had come out until you texted me and you said there's a Ghostbusters trailer. I was like, there's a Ghostbusters trailer, and I ran out and watched it right away. So that was my impression. What was your initial impression?
uh, mixed. That's the best way I can say it. That's the best way I can say it. And I'm going to leave it to the end, so because it's something that we don't see, and I think you probably can figure that out right off the bat. But for anybody that hasn't seen the trailer and is watching it with us for the first time, I'm going to tell you at the end what it is that kind of has irked me. So, and I think you know what it is because it's something that's not in it, and I think you yourself would have appreciated this being in it. So, because it goes back to what we've just been talking about. So we start out. It looks like they're kind of driving, right? They're driving to their new home. So we got a little bit of like exposition going on, kind of explaining that they're going to their grandfather's creepy house because I guess they're broke, right?
Right.
So these are the grandchildren of one of the Ghostbusters. I'm not sure if at this point they've told us which one they're related to. Some people have said they did a great job with casting because you can just look at them and tell
Yeah.
who it is that they're related to.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's pretty true.
I do think that's true. So right off the bat, and this is funny. I don't watch Stranger Things, but a lot of people right off the bat are saying this reminds me of Stranger Things. Did you feel that at all with this?
Yeah, I did. I now think it's intentional.
Yeah, I think it's totally intentional. So we got something coming out of this well on this spooky farm. This is obviously more of the town of where this farm is at. Paul Rudd apparently has a big part in this. It looks like he's a teacher or like a professor or something, like at the local college,
Right.
or maybe at the high school. Right, he's a
think
teacher
maybe-
of some sort.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a school teacher of some kind.
And apparently, this part I remember they were saying that apparently there are no fault lines or anything like that in this town, but it keeps having earthquakes. So I guess he's one of these people that's kind of looking at that and like, what's going on? Why are we having earthquakes when we don't have any fault lines here? Like, there's no reason for it, no natural reason for it anyway. So that's what they're talking about in this part.
I get the feeling that Paul Rudd's character is very much like the original Ghostbusters were before they became the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, like
someone
he's
who's
like
picked a bit of a-
He's like a parapsychologist, if you will. He's
yeah, exactly. Because they were teachers too. You know what I mean? I get the
Yeah.
feeling he's kind of the same kind of personality. So
That's a good call. I didn't pick up on that until you just said that, and you're right, because it does sound like he's doing the same thing they were doing. He's investigating this weird phenomenon, right? That everybody else is probably dismissing because they can't explain it. So they don't want to get anywhere near it because there's kind of that joke in Ghostbusters that mainstream scientists don't want anything to do with this because they don't have an explanation for it, so they don't want to touch it. So now we get the first inklings of what's really going on here, right? We get the classic trap, and it's actually Paul Rudd's character that identifies it because the kids have no idea what it is. Apparently they did not have a good relationship with their grandfather. That is one thing that irks me a little bit, but it is what it is. Apparently they didn't know anything about what he did, which I don't know how you wouldn't know, but I mean, it was a big event in that universe. But anyway, they don't know what this is. So Paul Rudd is telling them what it is. And he thinks it's a replica, right? He thinks it's a replica of a ghost trap, not realizing it's the real thing.
And it goes back to, it makes sense he would know what it is, because I think it reinforces my idea that he is basically as they were. That's why he would know all about them and be like, oh yeah, this is this. And, because he would have, if there was a franchise, maybe he might have wanted to be a part of it.
And we see him showing the footage, the news footage from when the event actually happened. That's obviously from the original Ghostbusters film. And he's showing the classic scene of them marching up to fight Gozer, right?
Right.
So he knows all about it. These kids apparently don't know anything about it. Like I said, that just irks me a little bit because I'm kind of like, how would they not know? But whatever. Apparently they were estranged from their grandfather. That seems to be the theme. Male parental figures have to be estranged, apparently, from their families in all situations. So that's a little of me just getting a little bit of a soapbox there that I don't like that. That's not the major issue I have with this trailer, though, by the way. That's just something that I don't like. So we see they're starting to play with the gadgets. They're starting to get into it, starting to figure out, I guess, what they do. So they're starting to use some of the equipment. The proton pack, which, can imagine a child with a proton pack.
Yeah, which I think we're going to get an idea about what that's. And then in case if we weren't sure, they show us the uniform so we know who the kids are related to.
Whoops. Hey, that goes by really fast.
It's real brief, yeah. I mean, we can just say it's Egon, so.
All right. Yeah, it's hard to catch that one.
I
didn't realize how fast that goes by.
Yeah, but I knew it was Egon because when she's, she has the PK meter and she's going around and investigating. When she's downstairs, there's a huge collection of mold, spores, and funguses sitting on all over the place. So I knew it was Egon immediately. Right?
Oh, you really are a fan. I didn't catch that either.
I was like, I didn't catch that. Yeah, I don't know why.
He had a collection, right? He had a collection of molds and spores and fungus, right?
Wasn't that was the line? One of his big things, because that's what when he and Annie Potts were flirting with each other. She asked him what he does for fun, and he's like, I collect mold, spores, and funguses. So
I hope she's grandma. That's also like, what happened to grandma? Where's grandma? I hope she was grandma.
Yeah.
If she wasn't grandma, that's gonna irk me. I hope she was grandma. Maybe she'll come in here at some point. I don't know. They didn't know. There's been no talk about grandma. So who's grandma?
I know that Annie Potts has some role to play in this because she was out promoting something else. I saw an article with her, and she was talking about this film. They had just finished filming it. So I hope she's grandma, and I hope it's not just some meaningless cameo. I hope she's grandma. That would really be something for me as a fan if she's grandma. Right.
Okay. Obviously doing some more investigating. This is part of the first teaser, right? Where we get to see the more spookiness. All right, this is probably the coolest part of the trailer, in my opinion, obviously, seeing the classic Ecto-1.
Yeah.
Back in action, the kids joyriding in it, which is exactly what a kid would do if they had this thing. So, and they're blowing the town up, which is also what kids would do if they had one of these things. And there it is, Ghostbusters Afterlife, summer 2020. All right, so I'm gonna give you the guess. What is it? Do you think is my major gripe about this trailer?
That we don't see any of the classic Ghostbusters in it.
Exactly.
Whatsoever.
I thought they learned from the last one. I really did, because in the last one, as my understanding it, they did have cameos of most of the major actors from the previous movies, from the originals. My understanding is that they appear as different characters in cameos. And I
Right.
was
They
like,
do.
why didn't they show any of that in the trailers? To me, it's just like, I get it sometimes, like where it's too much, like for instance, I was a little bit negative, like on the Star Trek Picard trailer, because I felt like they were almost like showing us too much. And I always felt like, I feel like this is all there is. And that's what they're showing us, with, as far as the reunions and stuff with like Riker and things like that. Um,
Right.
and I get that. I get like, but that also makes me concerned. Is like, are they in this film so is their role so minor? Are their scenes so small that they can't show us anything in the trailer because it's just like going to be a big nothing? Like they're just going to see him at the end of the movie or something, like Luke at the end of The Force Awakens. There's a great analogy for you. Is it going to be like that? Um, oh, if it's like that, I'm going to be so angry. I'm going
I
to be so
don't.
disappointed.
I honestly don't think it will be. I think they're holding them back for another trailer because this is like the
But
initial
why?
teaser
Why?
trailer.
Why do we need to hold them back? Like we held them back for the entire last movie.
That's a marketing thing for you. I'm sure some marketing director thought it'd be a brilliant idea. Um, I don't know. I mean, because they probably go. We have enough callbacks between the uniforms and the gadgets, and we got the car. We don't need to show
No,
them right off the bat.
no,
So,
that doesn't do it for me. I like seeing Ecto One. That's fine. Ecto One is almost like a character for me. But the thing is like, no, that's not enough for me. The it's just not. I wanted to see at least one of them, at least like in a silhouette. At least let's hear his voice. At least they got
well,
Luke's voice
we do hear,
in the Rise of Skywalker, right? So
well,
it's like,
we do hear Bill Murray's voiceover from the original Ghostbusters
oh,
in the
I don't remember
trailer.
that part. What does he say?
He's the one who's like, call it fate, call it karma. That's Bill Murray.
Oh,
That's his
okay.
voiceover from the original Ghostbusters. So I think that then from a marketing standpoint, they're thinking they're giving us enough of the classic Ghostbusters, and they need to sell us on the new ideas so that we'll buy into it. I understand. I mean, to me, to be completely honest, I liked the trailer and it worked for me, because I know that based off of everything I've read and everything I've heard, I know they have a role to play, and it's not a very minor kind of a role. Um, because they had issues getting some people to come back because it was probably more of a commitment than they wanted to do for this particular film. Um, but in order to properly pass the proton pack or the baton or whatever you want to say from one generation to another, enough of the originals need to come back, and they need to play enough of a substantial role that we feel like, you know what I mean, that it's been, the ghost trap has been passed from one generation to a new one. So I like I said, because I know that this was Jason Reitman's idea and that he's working with his dad. I know they're working with Dan Aykroyd. I feel pretty confident we're going to get something that's going to be good. I mean, I really think so. I mean,
well, I hope so. I definitely hope so. I hope the movie's good. I hope it is very much like you said, that passing of the baton. But I wasn't seeing a lot of passing there. It seems like the kids just find this stuff. Apparently, they're estranged with their grandfather. They didn't know anything about him. I don't like that. I mean, we're seeing that in Hollywood way too much. I'm a father myself. I don't appreciate it. You know what I mean? But we'll see. Hopefully, there will be that passing of the baton. That's what I want to see. I do want to see that passing of the baton. I'm fine with that. These actors are not going to be around forever. I get that. They have other things they want to do. I get that. So I would love to see a passing of the baton to another generation where they get that nice big stamp of approval and all that kind of stuff. I'm cool with that. Although I would like to keep seeing the original actors showing up in these movies. That's the other thing is I would love to keep seeing them come back. I love them in the roles. Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson. Would be nice to see Rick Moranis back, but I know he's pretty much retired from acting. But
right.
but I love all those old characters. I would love to see them coming back. I think they could have at least given us one of them, somebody in this trailer, and that's my biggest gripe with it. Doesn't mean I hate trailer. We lost the stream for a second there.
Yeah.
Just want to say I'm okay with the general idea. I like the idea of passing the baton. I'm fine with that. As far as that goes with the trailer, I'm cool with that. I hope it works, and I just hope they're respectful to the original characters and the fans, because the fans want the original characters.
I think they will be. I really do. I really do. We will see, but I feel pretty confident that they are going to be. I think the lesson was learned from the last one, because for me, it wasn't an all-female Ghostbuster team was the problem. It was just the fact that it was so disconnected from the original. It acts like the other events never even happened. And for me, I keep thinking about things like Cobra Kai, where it's a continuation. For me as a fan, I want to see a continuation of the story. Even if it has a few missteps and it stumbles, I would prefer to see a continuation than to throw away what came before.
Yeah, I agree. I am 100% that way, because I almost always like the originals better than the remakes, the reboots, all that stuff. And that's almost universal. Even with Battlestar Galactica, which, there's people that just love Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica. I had a lot of problems with it, and I still prefer the classic Battlestar Galactica. I don't hate Ron Moore's version, but I still prefer the classic. That's just the way I am. I like the original because the originals are always an original idea. And anytime you reboot or you remake something, you are stealing from the original creators. There's no other way to put it. So you have to do that in a respectful way, right? If you're going to be taking something from somebody else who created something, you have to do it in a respectful way. And if you don't acknowledge that and you kind of pretend like it's your own thing, I have a problem with it.
Right.
All right, we're good with Ghostbusters?
I think so.
All right, so I think now we got to get into streaming wars. All right. Did you have anything yourself as far as any streaming wars news?
No, not really. My only thing was kind of like in my news segment, where in a weird way, the streaming wars by Disney Plus wanting the Marvel, shows, for Disney Plus, and then Kevin Feige basically being put in charge of those. How that essentially shut Marvel TV down. So there is a streaming wars connection there, kind of in that story. But in my mind, I thought it was more of a pop culture story. So that's going to be my
in a lot of ways. I guess in a lot of ways, that Marvel TV division is a casualty of the streaming wars.
I think so.
So here's a Time article. Let's see if I can find the date on it. This was November 25th, 2019. A little bit older article. It says the streaming wars are finally in full swing, and the first casualties are coming into view. So we're just talking
Which you
about
still say is Fox, right? Fox was the first casualty.
I would like somebody to make that connection, because I haven't seen that. I think I'm the only one saying that. To me, Fox is the first casualty of the streaming wars. They basically saw what was coming. They saw it was coming up ahead and said, we are not prepared for this. We can't compete. A big thing was that they lost Star Wars, because obviously Star Wars seemed like a natural to go to Fox. I heard that was a big thing where they said we couldn't get Star Wars and we have a relationship with these guys. We're pretty much done. And so they sold out to Disney.
Well, I would say Marvel TV is either a second or a third casualty in my mind.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think in a lot of ways you're right that Marvel, the Marvel TV division is a casualty of the streaming wars. So anyway, this particular article is kind of, it's a little bit clickbaity as far as the content and everything like that. But they do make some interesting observations. First of all, they do kind of talk about what I've talked about in terms of that Apple Plus doesn't seem to be hitting the way that certainly Apple had hoped.
Right.
And they talk about these numbers. So it says they're spending, in terms of a budget, the Jason Momoa show C. They're saying that show is like $15 to $17 million per episode.
Lord.
So I've talked about what I think Apple's strategy is. I don't think they even care. I mean, they do care. I mean, when they're spending that much money, they got to care. But I think that they're in this position where they can spend that kind of money and they can lose all of it. And I think that's their strategy. As much as they are trying to do quality shows in terms of their stars. Obviously, Jason Momoa is one of the biggest stars in Hollywood right now. And getting him to be in a show is a huge coup. But I'm not hearing anything about this show. I haven't seen a single review on YouTube for this show. To me, it's like buried.
That's why I haven't seen any reviews.
Why is that?
Well, the characters are blind. That's why you don't see the reviews.
That's why I don't see them. I like it. I like how you think, Dave. So,
you would think you'd hear them though, but you don't see them. That's.
But they're talking like $15 to $17 million an episode.
Wow.
And by the way, this particular reviewer saw it and says it's mostly Jason Momoa stomping through the admittedly beautiful wilderness. So it's a lot of shots of him walking around.
Yeah,
and they paid $15 to $17 million per episode for that. Apparently,
that's what I'm saying. It's like where is the money? I mean, it's like work up some nice costumes, choreograph some stunts, and you're in the wilderness. It shouldn't cost $15 to $17 million per episode.
Well, a lot of that's probably his salary, to be honest.
Lord. Okay. All right.
So they did mention that they did mention that apparently Dickinson has a little bit of a fan base. I haven't heard anything on that either, quite frankly. But they're saying that they seem to be the one that has a little bit of a fan base going. The morning show, I think, was the one that they were really thinking was going to be their big thing. I've heard like nothing about the morning show. I'm going to cover them a little bit later because there was some news about the morning show that's good for them. But as far as like reviews, as far as buzz, I haven't heard hardly anything about them since the first week after they came out. Once Disney Plus came out, it was like nobody cared. And the one that really surprises me is we were talking about Ron Moore earlier. For All Mankind apparently hasn't generated much excitement either, according to this article.
Yet again, no mention of Snoopy in space. The only thing that actually had me thinking for half a second about pulling the trigger on the Apple TV thing, the Apple Plus, whatever it's called, that was the only thing, was the Snoopy in space, and still no mention.
Well, the Ron Moore thing was what had me interested. I was interested in For All Mankind. I thought there was an interesting premise, and I do like Ron Moore, despite the fact I was saying that I like the classic, be it Battlestar better. Doesn't mean I hate the remake. But I love what he did in Star Trek, and I'm always going to love Ron D. Moore because of what he did in Star Trek. And so I was interested in this because this is a kind of a sci-fi show in a way, but also like historical fiction. It kind of crosses genres, but I just haven't heard anything about it. I haven't heard any even Star Trek fans talking about it or anything. And I think part of it is because none of them have Apple Plus. Quite frankly, I don't. If it was on a different service, they might be talking about it. But I don't think anybody that I know has Apple Plus. So
I think they should have led with it. I mean, if they would have led with For All Mankind, if they had led with Dickinson, like. It just seems to me that, like, from talking about marketing again, from a marketing standpoint, they bet on the wrong shows. They put the wrong shows out front, and it didn't work. That's long and the short of it. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that they talk about is they feel as far as the people that are best situated to weather these streaming wars are clearly Apple Plus, Disney, and Time Warner. And also, they did mention NBC Universal seems like they're in a good position, which, by the way, I didn't find out until last week's coverage that NBC Universal's Peacock is going to be ad-based. So I'm going to be trying to support them. If they're coming out with new content, I'd like to talk about it because I'd like to support services that are doing free content, ad-based content. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes.
In that Universal service, they're going to have a lot of amazing content. Universal owns a lot of great films. They own a lot of great television. I mean, that's going to be they're going to be a major player. And with going with an ad-based model, more people are going to be able to watch those shows. And also, too, anything new that they roll out, if it does get any buzz, it's easier for people to get on the bandwagon, support, and you know what I mean, be a part of the discussion and the word of mouth to promote and help build the audiences for those shows.
Yeah.
You never know. Jason Momoa's C show might be a great show. It's like, but it's behind a paywall, and from the outside looking in, people are like, I don't know. I don't know about that. And as long as it's behind that paywall, people are not going to be able to sample it and see if it's any good. So
Another thing that this article points out is companies like Disney are looking at the long haul. They mention the number that Disney put out, which I think was 10 million, but they also mentioned that doesn't take into account necessarily all the free trial subscribers that probably bailed after that free trial, you know.
right.
But they pointed out that that Disney is looking ahead to 2024 when it hopes to have 60 to 90 million subscribers. So, and it also mentioned Apple Plus has renewed all 4 of its initial scripted shows. So that's interesting too. And I think that has to go with the deep pockets that Apple TV Plus has.
Well, some people
shows
just
are not hits, they're going to renew them anyway.
some people just like to watch the world. I mean, money burn.
Yeah, well, they got it. They've got $1 trillion. That's how much money Apple has. So
They got to write it off some way.
that they are flush with cash. Yeah, actually, that's a good way of looking at it too. You know, if you have some losers, and that can actually help their bottom line. So let's see here. One thing they also talked about, besides these big players, are some of these smaller players that they're a little bit worried about how they're going to fit in, and also about how this is going to affect content. Because let's see, they get down to, like, they talk about Stars and Discovery because they have streaming apps as well. In fact, Stars is actually available at a discount when you sign up for Disney Plus. I noticed that they had a discount for Stars. But a lot of these sites, they're saying, are kind of struggling. You've got things like Acorn TV, BritBox, AMC Networks itself, which of course they're saying that their biggest draw really is The Walking Dead, but they do a lot of what this reviewer considers really, really cool content. You know, they point out Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Better Call Saul, Killing Eve, numerous other shows I'm personally not into, but I'm aware of them. And
Well, it's like, Breaking Bad was a great show. Mad Men was a great show. Better Call Saul was a great show. Killing Eve was a great show. These are all great shows. So he's correct. Orphan Black's a great show. So, I mean, yeah, but it just comes back to that thing. It's like you have to lead with content if you're going to be behind a paywall that compels people to pay. Let me go back to Crisis just real briefly. For example, Titans on the DC universe, they apparently all do exist in the same universe. We see, spoiler alert, we see the Titans get basically turned to dust at the beginning of Crisis, But to me, that's not any great loss. I didn't like the Crisis show too much. So, and that's one of the big things that they're trying to use to sell the DC Universe app, where I think one of their potentially big selling points is actually a lot of the comics content. So it all comes back to how you're going to sell it. AMC has a lot of great content, but I think their app's been around for a while, hasn't it?
Yes, but it's not. It doesn't have the numbers. So like they talk about here, the total subscribers. Let's see. Here we go. Like they talk about. Specifically, they're talking about BBC shows, which apparently HBO Max has acquired a bunch of the BBC shows, the more popular BBC shows. So they're talking about sites like Acorn TV and BritBox, and the parent of Acorn is AMC Networks. And they operate 3 other services, Sundance Now, Shudder, Urban Movie Channel. Their total subscriber base is projected to top 2 million this year. So
Wow.
they're behind. They're way behind everybody else. The point of this part of the article was that the writer of the article is concerned that what's going to happen is a lot of these kind of critically acclaimed shows, these edgy shows like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Better Call Saul, that they're not going to be around anymore because these are the guys that are going to take the hit. Because that's the point of this article: is who's going to take the first hit. and
Right.
they're kind of not necessarily predicting, but concerned that they look like they're the ones that are going to take the hit. And what they're lamenting and what they're pointing out is that's going to mean the loss of a lot of content like that. A lot of the sort of more of that small niche content, is going to be kind of going away possibly, because look at what the big boys are doing. The big boys are doing big things like Star Wars, that kind of thing. Interestingly enough, this article doesn't mention CBS All Access at all, which I
Hmm.
thought was really interesting. This article doesn't even acknowledge them, doesn't acknowledge Star Trek, which I think is really interesting. I don't want to read into that too much, but this article doesn't even bring them up as a player, and that's really interesting to me. But they specifically talk about, with Apple, obviously they're getting big name talent. Disney is obviously putting their all their eggs into basically Marvel and Star Wars. They're using these big marquee names to get their channel going. So it's kind of interesting. So the bottom line is this going to make a lot of this other kind of content, some of the stuff that's a little bit more of a, like I said, a little bit more of a smaller audience, a little bit more daring, if you will, a little bit edgier, not like this big franchise type stuff. Are we going to see a lot of that go away, and will they ultimately be the first big casualty of the streaming wars? So that's basically the point of the article, is they're concerned about a lot of these smaller channels and things like that that produce this kind of like more artsy kind of content, that they're not going to make it. So
Well,
we'll see if it becomes the case or not.
and I see that, but along the same lines, there's a lot of other niches and things that need to be served. Like, for example, I've been enjoying Pluto TV, and the majority of what I'm using Pluto TV for is news. I couldn't
Yeah.
find, and like out of all these services that I have between Amazon Prime and Netflix and CBS has news, but it for some reason it's not I don't know how to put it. It's not that the CBS news is bad. It's just their interface is confusing enough. I didn't realize there was a way I could easily stream the news. I thought I was just limited to live TV when it came to news. And I just recently discovered it's like, oh, okay, well, the interface is a little bit different. I'm just confused by the interface. There is a way I can watch some of it, but it's still not the way I would like it presented, But one of the things for Pluto TV for me is I've been able to get a lot of my news off of that. They have a lot of different news channels. I'm not, watching any other stuff on Pluto TV but news. So, for a good news, that's an area where any one of these services, if they could find a good solution for it, that's a niche that they could exploit. That's valuable. That people
By the
would
way,
definitely.
Apple does have a news thing in that article. I didn't mention it, but in the article, it talks about how Apple's talking about bundling their news service with their Apple Plus. Along
Well,
with they have another service too. I don't know if it's sports or something like that. Kind of similar, I guess, what Disney does. Although Disney doesn't have a news, they have Hulu and ESPN Plus that you can bundle together. But they specifically mentioned that Apple seems to be looking at that option because their news service hasn't been doing that well either, quite frankly. And they're thinking about bundling it with Apple Plus and one of their other services to kind of give it more of a, give it more of a, make it more appealing. That's the bottom line, right?
Well, see, there you go. It all goes back to that content that people are willing to pay for, and it's all about how you package it and how you market it.
Yeah.
And for me, when I look at all the different streaming services, I don't see a simple, in my mind anyway. Well, this service is going to be good for this and news. I can't think of a single one of these. It's like this service is going to be great for this, but then also news. And that's kind of the thing I'm seeing. It's like, I know they're talking about, well, what about these great TV shows? But what about a simple way just to get the news? That's an important thing that seems to be getting lost.
Apple's working on it. So they're the one that's actually doing that.
Okay.
And then I do want to say, you were talking about Pluto TV.
Yeah.
I always like to give shout outs to free streaming services. Pluto TV is free. It's ad based. So definitely check it out if you haven't checked it out already. I always like to give shout outs to those services because the paywall's always been a big thing for me ever since we started doing our streaming wars coverage. And I understand people they're not going to do any of this stuff because it's just too expensive for them. And they probably already have Netflix, quite frankly. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I think you have a good point, and it's kind of funny to me that that's what Apple's thinking. So Apple's doing that. They're going to be apparently bundling their news with Apple Plus. So there's at least one service that's looking at doing that. And then speaking of Apple, I just wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out, but it's kind of interesting. The morning show did apparently get a Golden Globe nomination. There are people that are making a big deal about this because obviously you have HBO and Netflix get awards like crazy. They've been establishing themselves as a real force when it comes to all these different awards. And apparently this is the first time, obviously, Apple Plus has been nominated on one of their shows. So this is something that is obviously good for them in terms of attention and just sort of that, I guess, critical acclaim. Although, again, personally, I've heard almost nothing about the morning show. That week before Disney Plus came out, I was hearing stuff about the morning show.
Right.
That was the only Apple show I was hearing anything about. And then once Disney Plus came out, nothing. But apparently they did get a Golden Globe nomination, which I don't think the Mandalorian will. So that's something, right?
Well, and see, for me, it's like the award-winning show that's good, that's on a streaming service. I just finished the third season of The Marvelous Ms. Maisel, which is on Amazon Prime, and that's a fantastic show. I felt like third season was good. I don't know if it was as strong as seasons 2 or the first one, but still a very, very great, well-scripted television series. Very funny, incredibly well acted. Period. Takes place in the late 50s into the early 60s. Very interesting time period of to explore in terms of where America was, and they do a great job with it. A lot of interesting salutes to old Hollywood. And how they stage and put the production together. And it's a great show that I recommend to anyone. So I don't know. Yeah, it's like for me, it's because it's weird because I know for most people they hear me screaming about Crisis. It's like, oh, he likes superhero stuff. But I watch all kinds of stuff. I'm worried about how I'm going to get my news. I'm over here watching Miss Maisel. You know what I mean, or Mrs. Maisel. So. It's like no one really fits into that real simple box, and at the end of the day, it's all about how you sell it and how you present it, So we'll see as we move forward who weathers the streaming wars. But I agree with you. I think Fox was the first casualty. I think Marvel TV was a casualty, and and it's weird too because I feel like the Marvel shows were definitely one of the earliest first casualties of streaming wars. Because once they announced Disney Plus, all these great shows on Netflix, all of a sudden they all got canceled real darn quick. Every single one of them. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. That's actually an excellent point.
I think that's good for me on the streaming wars side.
Yeah. I'm good with that too. All right, so we're going to be moving on to some sad news, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
All right, so we're going to be talking about the death of Star Trek Deep Space Nine actor Rene Auberjonois. I believe I did pronounce his name correctly. And some of our thoughts about him. I pulled up an article that just has a bunch of a lot of Twitter tributes from various Trek alumni. So at that's kind of to scroll there in the background, but I thought mainly Dave and I would like to just talk about our thoughts about Mr. Auberjonois. and how we first got to hear about him and know about him and all that stuff. So I'll start with you, Dave. How did you first hear about Mr. Auberjonois?
Well, I was trying to pronounce his name earlier, so if I say it slightly wrong, everyone please forgive me. It's not meant as a sign of disrespect at all. It's just I'm struggling with saying his name. Um, I first noticed him on Benson as a kid. I used to watch Benson all the time. He was sort of the antagonist of the show, the character you either loved or hated. He was always sort of like a thorn in Benson's side. Um, and then he was that actor who was just in a bunch of different stuff. It's like, oh, it's that guy from Benson again. He just kept showing up in things. Um, and I got to where when I saw him, he was kind of like a welcome, someone you were kind of familiar with, you know. When he got cast as Odo in Deep Space Nine, I thought it was a little weird because I felt like he was maybe a little bit too old for that role at that time because I'd seen him on television, it seemed like my entire life. Um, but he was really great as Odo and brought a lot to that character. I mean, he's a very talented. He was a very very talented actor, and Odo is one of my favorite Star Trek characters. Deep Space Nine is one of my favorite Star Trek shows, and part of it is because of Odo. I love that character and what he brought to the show in terms of his character's dynamic and everything. Um, but beyond that, I have a Batman callback. Mr. Auberjonois actually played, I think it was Dr. Burton or something. It was a callback to Tim Burton. He shows up at the very, very end, the tail end of Batman Forever. He's the psychiatrist who is working with Jim Carrey's Edward Nygma, or the Riddler. It's a very brief part.
Really?
However, yes.
I didn't know
however,
that.
However, he did the audio book adaptation of the novelization of Batman Forever. And he does all of the characters. And the novelization has a lot more information about Dick Grayson, a lot more information about Nicole Kidman's character. It has a lot more information about Harvey Dent and his relationship with Bruce. And it's just a really great audio book adaptation of Batman Forever. And I have a fondness. I think people who know me really well know I love the movie Batman Forever. It's such a great adaptation of it. And it's so amazing to hear him do all the different voices and all the different characters and set everything up. And it's one of my favorite Batman things is actually that audiobook adaptation of the novelization for the Batman Forever. So when I think of Rene Auberjonois, I actually closely associate him with Batman Forever because of that. So he's just been one of those great actors who has been a part of so many things that I've enjoyed over the course of my life. It's fitting we're talking about him and talking about our memories of him. I never had the chance to meet him at a convention or anything. I don't think he ever did a convention that I ever did. So I've never really had a chance to really meet him per se. I don't have a lot of personal stories, but just for me personally, growing up, being a fan of genre entertainment, I mean, not only Star Trek, but he, for me, was an important part of Batman as well, because of that adaptation. So that for me is going to be my thoughts and remembrances for Rene Auberjonois. What about you, Eric?
Well, just like you, I remember him from Benson. And I used to watch Benson all the time when I was growing up. It was one of those shows that I really liked. And of course, his character was very unlikable character. Very annoying character, you know? The show is obviously about Benson, and he was kind of like Benson's kind of foil, you know. Well, Benson had a lot of people. He pretty much made fun of everybody on the show. There was nobody safe on that show from Benson. That was kind of the idea, right? But I remember him on that show, and I'm not sure if when Deep Space Nine came out, I even made the connection that it was the same actor, because his name is very difficult to pronounce. Like I said, I was a kid. I was very unaware as a kid who actors were, especially supporting actors.
Right.
So I don't know if I even knew who he was when Deep Space Nine came along. I think as the show actually came out, I kind of realized, hey, that's the guy from Benson under all that makeup, you know.
Right.
And I think about that because I think that's a real testament of a great actor, is that you cannot necessarily recognize him from part to part. And I think Rene was one of those kind of actors. He was in so many things. I didn't know he was in Batman Forever. He's in so many things. I didn't realize one little gem I got from all this and the Twitter storm when he passed. Somebody put out that I guess he was cut from Star Trek 6, but he's in the director's cut. Have you seen that scene?
Yeah, he plays Colonel West.
Yeah.
He's actually one of the military analysts who comes in. He's the one who tells them that, frankly, sir, they could kick their chronometers or whatever. It's kind of an interesting little scene. And it's interesting because I think I've mostly seen the director's cut. Like, I'm a big director's cut guy, so when I go to buy stuff, if there's a director's cut, I always get it. So I always associate his character of Colonel West, with Star Trek, and with specifically Star Trek 6. I consider it an important part of that story. So
I've never seen it. I saw it in the theater. I've seen it on cable many times. Anytime it comes on TV or something, I watch it because I like Star Trek 6, but I don't own it. And I never got the director's cut. I never seen it. So I didn't even know he was in it. And so I saw that clip and I was like, that's a pretty cool clip. And I had no idea he was even in the movie.
Well, he's the Klingon with the rifle that when they pull the mask off, that's him.
Right.
He was the assassin.
But again, I think a real testament to an actor is the fact that you don't necessarily recognize him in multiple roles.
Right.
And I think that's why he had a really interesting career, because on the one hand, he was a regular cast member of Benson, which was a pretty big show in the 80s. And then he was a regular cast member on Deep Space Nine, which was a pretty big show in the 90s. But in between and before and after, he did so many other things and so many different things, different parts where you see people talking online and stuff. It's like, oh, well, he was in this too. Oh, did you know he was in this? Did you know he was in that? I was like, no, I didn't. I had no idea. He just had an amazing career. And like I said, I just think that's the ultimate testament that you can make to an actor, is say, hey, I didn't recognize you in that other movie at all. That means you're a real actor. And I think that his talent was just off the scales. And also, it's kind of interesting when you talk about Star Trek actors, very few of them were established prior to their version of Star Trek. There are exceptions, of course, and he's one of them. I mean, this is a guy who was on a network television show, in the 80s as a regular cast member, and then he came on to Deep Space Nine, and obviously Avery Brooks also was from a successful television show, but the rest of the cast really wasn't. So I appreciate things like that too. The fact that this was someone who was involved with sort of, if you will, mainstream Hollywood type stuff and was willing to get into genre, because that was not his shtick. That was not his thing.
Right.
And I always appreciate that with Star Trek, when an actor who isn't necessarily big on science fiction does it, agrees to do it, especially as a regular cast member. It's one thing to be a guest star, because Star Trek, through its various incarnations, has so many huge guest stars, but he was a regular cast member, and that can bring baggage. It's happened to the best of them. A lot of Trek actors, they get typecast. But I think that I guess he was confident enough in his abilities, which I think were vast, that he was willing to take on that challenge and be in a very sort of iconic role, as Odo, as an alien, because that's obviously, he stands out. He stands out very much so. He's also, one thing I really wish, because, I was at Star Trek Vegas, in August, and he was there, but I didn't get to see him, and I didn't get to go to any of his panels. And I'd always wanted to talk to him, because I always wanted to say, I think it's so cool that basically you're like the only actor that I know of, or, for Star Trek, at least the main cast, that played a non-humanoid, you
Yeah.
know. And I've always wondered how he approached that, being that's such a different type of alien, because all the other aliens that we have in Star Trek, you know, Klingons, Romulans, whatever, all these other big classic Vulcans, you know, they're still humanoids. And what's so different about Odo is that Odo was a shapeshifter, and his natural state was basically a bunch of goo, you know.
Right.
And so I always thought that was really interesting that he was able to do that, and in a lot of ways a very convincing way, because you feel, watching Deep Space Nine, you feel the isolation of Odo a lot, and the fact that he knows he's so different than everybody else. And he did a really good job, and he did it in I think a good subtle way, in the way that he portrayed Odo and Odo's sort of isolation of being the only one like himself. And then of course it even goes worse, where he finds his people and he hates them. His people
Right.
are revolting to him, you know.
Right.
And so it's even worse for him. Odo has one of the greatest character arcs in Deep Space Nine, and of course, making that work ultimately came up on his shoulders, and I think he did a very good job. I'm not a big fan of romance in Star Trek, like long-term romance, because I think a lot of times it kind of gets in the way of everything else, of the stuff that I want to see in Trek.
Right.
And this is one of the few romances that I really enjoyed. You know, I have Nana Visitor's remarks up on the screen right now. And I always thought that the romance between Odo and Kira was just, like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It's tragic. It ends up being sort of a tragic romance, you know, very, very, very bittersweet. But I like the idea that Odo at least kind of got his chance, you know, because he had been basically loving Kira from afar. He had been friend zoned. I mean, a lot of people understand being friend zoned. That's pretty universal. Right. A lot of people understand that, and how much that hurts. And the fact that he overcame that, he got out of the friend zone, and he actually had a very passionate romance with Kira. And I always thought that was really interesting. And like I said, I like, for instance, I don't like the Cassidy. I don't like the Cisco's romance at all. I thought it just got in the way.
Right, yeah.
I thought it just got in the way and was stupid. And I didn't like it. They also ripped it off from Babylon 5. But anyway, the freighter captain thing. So, but I never liked it. And most of the long-term romances, like, I don't like Chakotay and Seven. I hate that. I hate Chakotay and Seven. I think that was just out of the blue terrible. But this is a romance, long-term Trek romance that I really enjoyed, that I really liked. And I think a lot of it comes down to Rene's acting. I think the fact that he was able to convey that romance in such a really beautiful way, that's just, again, another tribute to the level of actor that he was. I really regret not meeting him, but I did have one story from the convention circuit, which was one of the first Star Trek conventions I went to as a kid, and one of the best ones I ever went to as a kid. It was DeForest Kelley, Michael Dorn, and Armin Shimmerman, and this was like the first year of Deep Space Nine, and this was like one of the last appearances by DeForest Kelley, by the way, which I was always really happy I got to see him in person. I didn't get to meet him, but I got to see him in person, and I got to see him talk, and that was a big thrill for me as a kid.
Right.
And Michael Dorn was there. I was super into The Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine had just come out. And I was one of those people that the first season of Deep Space Nine was kind of like, ugh, you know, I felt it was like kind of all over the place. Basically, the first 2.5 seasons for me are kind of just up and down, all over the place. And I didn't stay with Deep Space Nine initially, but I was watching it at the time. And Armin Shimmerman was one of the guests. And Armin Shimmerman was really cool. And he actually did a signing. And he did that thing where he basically waited for everybody. And I went and I got to meet Armin Shimmerman. I got a picture with him and all that stuff. And I talked to him. And I remember one of the things that people were asking, everybody was asking Armin, was, how do you pronounce Rene's last name? Because they're like, nobody knew how to do it. So I just remember that people were constantly asking him that, because he does have sort of an unusual last name. That's difficult for a lot of Americans to pronounce, but that's the thing that I remember.
Right.
And I know a lot of people have heard that stories before. Where I heard a story on Twitter from somebody where he was talking about at a convention, he went out of his way to tell everybody, this is how you pronounce my last name. So it was kind of a running joke with him. And that's my little story there. So I think it's a great loss for the Trek community. He was a great actor. I think like I said, I think it's a loss for Hollywood. He did do so many other things. Like I said, I remember him from Benson before Deep Space Nine. So I just think that it is a big loss, but he had quite a career. I definitely was a fan. Definitely a fan of Rene.
Yeah, I was too. And I, it's one of those things I've thought about this for forever. And I don't think and I'm not trying to nod to Batman Forever, but, whenever I used to watch the way that he would play Odo, for some reason, when it came to Kira, I always got the feeling that there was this Phantom of the Opera vibe with him. That he was this misshapen monster,
Yeah.
Admiring her and wanting her from afar, but not sure how to close that gap. But always kind of being there. I always felt like that whenever I saw him interacting with Kira, that's what I always thought of in my mind was the Phantom from the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's definitely that vibe. There was actually a really cool episode. I don't know if you remember, where they ran into this planet where they basically had. It turned out that there was this sort of like time issue, and in essentially an alternate reality, they had crashed on the planet, and the people they were meeting were actually their descendants. Do you remember that episode?
Yes.
Okay. That is a standout Rene episode. That's a standout Rene episode because he got to appear as an older version of himself. Basically, he was like 300 years older, and he had gotten much better at shapeshifting to the point that he looked like Rene. He didn't look like Odo,
Right.
And he had this wonderful performance where basically he kind of seduces Kira. Kira suddenly like sees Odo in a completely different light,
Right.
because he's very smooth. He's got much more defined facial features now. He looks much more human, and just his whole demeanor, just very smooth. I just remember that because Odo's very stiff. Odo's very stiff.
Right.
But this older version of Odo was just like a smooth operator. Like he was good, and you could kind of see the sort of the idea was kind of forming in Kira's head that maybe the way she saw Odo wasn't all that was there, that there was more there than she saw, and that was the way she saw it, was because she saw this older version of him. So I think that's a standout performance. I wish I could remember the name of the episode. But that was a real standout performance where he got to play like a different version of Odo, where he really wasn't like that beast. He wasn't really like the Phantom of the Opera. He was more like this kind of smooth operator almost,
Right.
So, yeah, that's a standout episode in my mind. I wish I could remember the name of it. So we good there?
I think so.
All right, so we're getting ready for our main topic, right?
Yep. We're going to Tatooine. I guess we're going to land on Mos Eisley.
And that's pretty much all you need to know, right?
Yep, I think so.
And of course, what we're trying to talk about here is the latest episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 5. This is The Gunslinger. So
go ahead.
Let's start at the beginning. What was your overall impression of this episode?
I didn't hate this episode, but it's not one of my favorites. It's interesting because as I was watching this episode, I was hearing some of your criticism of the episode before, where it felt sort of like a side mission, and that it wasn't necessarily moving the narrative forward in any meaningful way, And I felt like this episode unfortunately for me, kind of did that. So my initial impressions are, um, I didn't hate it, but it's not one of my favorites. There was some things I kind of had fun with, and then there was some things I felt like just kind of left me a little cold. What were your initial impressions of this episode, The Gunslinger?
Well, as you said, you know, I had made that complaint about the previous episode, Sanctuary, regarding this sort of stalling of the narrative, if you will. Okay, that's kind of my criticism of Sanctuary. My biggest criticism of Sanctuary. Besides, I also get into lore issues too. So I do have some lore issues with this particular episode as well. But more so, I had lore issues with Sanctuary. I didn't have the lore issues with this particular episode as much, because I don't think they really got into a lot of lore. So that to me is almost kind of a win, because I get really freaked out when the lore is bad, when they do things that I think are really bad for the overall, not just this show. I'm talking about Star Wars in general, because when you mess up the lore, that has implications for other shows, movies, kinda, sorta, because it seems like these directors, writers do whatever they want anyway. But for me as a fan, that's what I'm into. So I didn't see the lore issues that I saw in the previous episode, but as you mentioned, I did see the issue of this didn't really advance the narrative except for the end.
Right.
I do think that scene at the end is meant to be relevant, and there's a lot of speculation about that scene at the end. A lot of speculation about that scene in the end that actually surprised me, because I didn't know really what was going on. But overall, the episode to me was very much a side quest, very much like Sanctuary in that regard. Although at least with Sanctuary, the basic premise of Sanctuary is okay. It makes sense that the Mandalorian would be trying to hide out somewhere, right?
Right.
That makes sense. This situation was a little different, because basically we have, with the opening, basically we have the situation where the Mandalorian ship has become damaged, and he needs to go somewhere to fix it. And that's a fairly, mundane, obvious plot, right? The thing that kind of makes or breaks this episode, depending on your perspective, is where he ends up, right?
Right.
The planet that he ends up on conveniently, and then also what happens while he's there. And most of what happens while he's there was, I thought, inconsequential. Where he was is really going to make or break the show for you, because those of us who love Tatooine, those of us who want to see it, they're happy about it. I've seen that there's a big divide on this, by the way. I've seen there's a big divide online, and even with YouTube commentators, about the whole issue of bringing Tatooine back, because a lot of fans, they love it. They just want more Tatooine. They love seeing Tatooine. I thought we were already on Tatooine, by the way. I thought we were on Tatooine with the Jawas.
Yeah, I did
They
too.
just didn't say it. But I found out later, I don't know if we discussed this, but I found out later, are you familiar with the latest toys, the Black series of toys?
Yeah, it's an off-world Jawa.
Off-world Jawa, yeah, which I didn't know what that was until I saw the toy, and then I was like, well, that's stupid. That was my reaction. That's stupid. When did they ever say the Jawas were a spacefaring race? There's no evidence they're a spacefaring race at all. We never see them on any other planets, So I thought that was kind of cheesy. I almost kind of liked the idea that the second episode was Tatooine, but you just didn't say it. Why do you have to say it? In this episode, they went out of their way to say it. Not only is it Tatooine, right, but we're going to Mos Eisley, which is like, okay, there are other settlements on Tatooine. But, it's one of those things. This is actually, I think, very controversial among fans, because I've been seeing the reaction from people. And some people love it because they want Tatooine. They want to see Tatooine. They want to see Mos Eisley. They want to see the bar that Luke went into, which I assume that's the same bar,
right,
that we see when the Mando meets the Gunslinger. It just comes down to, how do you see those things? Do you see it as, this is fun? This is something that's really cool. this is it brings me back, or do you see it as fan service? And I saw there's a toy reviewer that I watched sometime called The Junkman. Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
He did a rant, and it made me think. It did make me think. He is a big Star Wars fan. He loves Star Wars. Okay. And he came out and he said he loved this episode. And he said before he did his review, he went out and looked at other reviews. So I do the same thing. I look at other people's reviews because I kind of like to try to get the pulse of what people are thinking. And also sometimes people make good points of things I didn't think of, good or bad, right?
Right.
And he was lamenting. He was so upset because he's like, what is wrong with you guys? I mean, it's like, what's wrong with fan service? That's a good question. What's wrong with fan service? Because he's like, I'm a fan. I want to see Tatooine. I want to see the dewbacks. I want to see the sand people. That's what I like. I like Star Wars, so that's what I like. And I get that. I completely get that because I like those things too. I like Tatooine. I like Mos Eisley. I like the dewbacks. I like the sand people. I like the banthas. I like all that stuff. But the question that comes in my mind when you talk about fan service and what is fan service, the idea for me is it advancing the story? Is it important to the story or isn't it? And just my personal view, and this is just my personal view, I think people can disagree on this. My personal view is I would have preferred the second episode be Tatooine, and they never told us. That would mean the first episode was too. Where we got Baby Yoda, that was right. Tatooine. They just never tell us. It's just in some other. They could tell us later. You know what I mean? But they don't have to tell us in the episode. It would have been nice to find out later that was Tatooine. But it seems to me, like as a fan, I was saying, well, of course that's Tatooine because those are Jawas. I wasn't aware of the Black Series toy that establishes that there's off-world Jawas. See, I don't like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? To me, that's like, why do I have to go find the toy to know what the hell's going on in the story? Right. And then, of course, in this episode, they just knock you over the head with it. Like, this is Mos Eisley. This is Tatooine. You know what I mean? It's like, why can't he just show up at this place and it has all that familiar stuff? And we as fans know it's Tatooine. We don't need to be hit over the head with it, right? But at this point, I question, because Jawas can be found on other planets, does that mean, dewbacks can be found on other planets and banthas can be found? We're going to find sand people on other planets now, and we're never going to know where the hell we are because they can just do this, because that's fan service to me. They're just going to throw these guys in there no matter where we are or where we're going. It kind of defeats to me. It's like, why do we have off-world Jawas if the Mandalorian was going to go to Tatooine anyway? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why do we need off-world Jawas if the Mandalorian was eventually going to go to Tatooine anyway? How about we have 2 or 3 episodes of the Mandalorian on Tatooine instead of 1? How about that?
Right.
So I think people can disagree about this. Because I think it's a good question. What is fan service? Why is fan service bad? To me, fan service is bad when it doesn't really advance the narrative and it doesn't really have any specific reason for being there. I would much have preferred to just have where we found Baby Yoda, where the Jawas were. That was Tatooine. We didn't have to knock you over the head with it. We knew it was Tatooine because there were Jawas, and leave it at that. Now we have this situation where apparently there's off-world Jawas. All right, we got to go to Tatooine. I guess that's cool. The other planet reminded me of Tatooine. Jakku reminds me of Tatooine. That's the other part of it. It's like, how many desert planets are there? And why does everybody seem to want to live on a desert planet? I don't get that either, And that goes back to also the one ecosystem thing, which I always think is kind of silly. Yeah, every planet has one ecosystem. Okay, whatever. I did like all those things. I do like Mos Eisley. I do like the Sand People. I do like dewbacks. I do like banthas. I was happy to see those things. It's just that the context matters to me, and it just kind of seemed like fan service. That's the bottom line. It kind of just seemed like fan service. And once again, like I said for the last episode, Baby Yoda didn't seem very relevant at all. He did one cool thing, right? He did one cool thing.
Right.
He did the Obi-Wan thing, right? When he came out of the ship. which I thought that was cool. That was him using the Force again, which a lot of people might not have realized that. So we did have another example of Baby Yoda using the Force, and he did the entrance like Obi-Wan, where he does the dragon sound, coming out of the ship. I liked that. I thought that was really cute.
Right.
Hey, I've said this a bunch of times. I'm consistent with this. Let's just do a Baby Yoda show. Let's just do Baby Yoda. Let's have Baby Yoda on his adventures. He could find a new protector every week. Every week, somebody else falls in love with him, and they die. They die every week protecting Baby Yoda. Now that'd be a great show. Come on.
Okay, yeah.
Favreau, are you out there? I know you wrote this. I'm not saying I hate The Mandalorian, but come on. My idea as a spin-off would be awesome. Just every week, somebody new protects Baby Yoda, and they die at the episode. We could introduce hundreds of new characters, because Baby Yoda, we can milk that forever.
Right.
But those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on fan service? I mean, you hear the term a lot, and I'm sure you have your own ideas on that. And do you think this was an example of fan service, good or bad, or what do you think?
Well, I don't have any issues with fan service. I was just talking earlier in this episode about Crisis. I mean, all Crisis is to an extent is fan service. So,
but Crisis is a story too, isn't it? I mean, it's its own story.
But there's a lot of stuff they're doing that's also just fan service, So I don't have any issues with fan service. I didn't have any problems with them going to Tatooine. I didn't have any problems with them landing at a spaceport at Mos Eisley. I didn't have any issues with any of that. My problem with this episode is the gunslinger sucks. The kid, I just didn't like him. I didn't like his look. I didn't like his demeanor. I didn't think he was very good at what he did. When he kind of got the drop on someone, I didn't buy it for a minute.
Well, the thing is, though, that remember, as far as him not being good, that makes sense because this is his first mission. So he shouldn't be good, right? This is his first mission.
I'm just saying, it's just, I didn't like him from the jump. Like this character sucks. Can someone kill him and get him off the screen? Like, I just, because I didn't care for his character. I didn't like his look. He looked to me, he looked like someone from today, cosplaying in a Star Wars show. All the other characters so far have been very kind of unique in their look and their approach and how they kind of come across, and it kind of works. He just didn't fit. And that's my big gripe is like, I didn't like the kid in this episode. And because of that, I didn't care if he succeeded in his mission or he failed in his mission. And then Ming-Na Wen is in this episode. She's the Imperial assassin or whatever that they're trying to bring in. I didn't have any issues with her either. I just didn't like this dude. I didn't like this dude, and I didn't like the character he was playing. And I don't have a lot of reasons other than it just didn't work for me. Like, I didn't buy him from the moment that I saw him. I didn't buy that he was a character in the Star Wars universe. There was just something about his look and his demeanor and the way he handled himself. He just seemed like a Backstreet Boy. Like, why is there a Backstreet Boy in the episode of The Mandalorian? Like,
I like that. That's a good analogy.
It's like, so that was my problem. Is that everything else that happened, I just felt like I was, unfortunately for this episode, this is the first episode where I felt like I was marking time. I was just like, when are we going to get to something interesting for me? Since they're on Tatooine, it should appeal to me, because I don't have any issues with fan service. I just hated that the Mandalorian went to Tatooine and he found this guy. Like, I don't know. There's so many interesting characters if we're going to go to Tatooine and he could have run into that could have even been more fan service and been kind of fun. He could have been running around with Dengar. He could have been running around with, I don't know, anybody, and it just, I don't know. It's just, I didn't understand why this kid didn't have to put on some makeup or something.
No, I totally agree with you 100%. That was one of the things that I really, really disliked about this particular character was that he seemed far too contemporary. He seemed like you said, like somebody that you could pull out of the street, here,
Right.
He didn't seem, like you said, the way you described it, he doesn't fit in that universe. I would also say very much so the mechanic was the same way. She was very jarring to me in the same regard because I didn't feel like she fit into Star Wars at all. I felt she fit into like some sort of situation comedy from today. That's not a Star Wars character. She didn't act like a Star Wars person. I would go back to the blue guy in the first episode. That was one of the things that was really jarring to me. He didn't. We lost the stream for a second, but I would go back to that blue character in the first episode, the first mark that the Mandalorian gets. He had the same
Right.
thing going on, and I don't like it. I didn't like that with the mechanic, with the blue guy, and I don't like it with the gunslinger. I don't even know what his name is. I think it's Torres or something. I don't know. I don't care.
I don't know. I don't
I agree with you. He's kind of an unremarkable character, but I will say this: for him, despite the issues with his demeanor, which I do have major issues with his demeanor, it's okay for me to see a throwaway character every now and then that you're not necessarily very likable or anything like that, because he's just a throwaway character. You're going to have that sometimes. But I agree, he doesn't fit in the Star Wars universe. He just didn't. But he did do what I thought was the coolest thing in the episode. And this is spoiler territory, so anybody doesn't want any spoilers, spoiler territory. But when he had the Imperial assassin character, when they were left by themselves, and the Mandalorian had gone to get the dewback.
Yeah.
At that part, it seemed to me that there was a very obvious direction that they were going in, because we've talked about this being sort of a live action cartoon.
Yeah.
Good or bad, it's a live action cartoon, and it's pretty much held up to that, with most of the writing, I think. Good or bad, whether you think that's good or bad, it's a live action cartoon. So we had this situation where this assassin character is basically convincing the gunslinger, hey, the Mandalorian, he's a wanted man himself. He betrayed the guild. I don't know if you heard about that, but he did. And plus he's got all that Beskar, all this other stuff. And it kind of is cool because in that conversation, you kind of get the motivation of the gunslinger. He doesn't really care about money right now. He wants to get the reputation, and he wants to get it quick, and he wants to get it fast. He wants to have that big rep. That's what he cares about. That's his motivation. And it's very clear in that conversation that's what he wants. And she convinces him that going after the Mandalorian is going to get you much more prestige than bringing in this assassin, right? And in my head, I could see where it was going. I was like, okay, this guy's an idiot. Like you said, he's not very likable. He's a moron. He's going to take the binders off of the assassin girl, and she's going to kill him, and then she's going to go after the Mandalorian. That's what I saw. I don't know if that's how you saw. That's what I saw. I was like, I can see that coming a mile away. That's exactly what's going to happen. And this is the first time this show has done this to me. And they just surprised the heck out of me when he shot her. When he shot her and killed her, I was like, whoa. That was a moment where I was like, we're not in Kansas anymore, we haven't seen something like that in this show. Even though this show is supposed to be like this gritty bounty hunter thing, that's the first time I saw a gritty bounty hunter thing done in this show. Because that is a gritty bounty hunter thing to do. That's like, this guy understands. He says it. He actually says it. He says, if I let you go, you're going to kill me. I'm not that stupid. He's stupid, but he's not that stupid. And he does exactly the lot, because you never see characters do the logical things in movies or TV shows like this. You just don't. They always have to do stuff that's going to kind of create this, whatever the narrative is, whatever direction they're going. And I thought that was a huge twist. I didn't see it coming. I watched it with my brother. He like almost gasped, like, whoa. My daughter was watching with us. She was like, whoa, what the heck just happened? We all had that moment. Nobody saw that coming. And I thought that was an amazing twist. It really was, because like I said, this show hasn't really surprised me a lot. in terms of like where I had that kind of a moment. It surprised me in terms of it's gone in directions I didn't think the show was going to go in, because we had that trailer review where we talked about where we thought the show was going, and I don't think we got anything right. But anyway,
no, we're totally wrong.
But the thing is, I haven't had those moments where I was just like, wow, whoa, what just happened there? And that's what happened after that moment. I really had that. I was shocked. I was like, I can't believe he did that. I was like, she's got to still be alive or something, It's like, no, the Mandalorian goes and sees her and she's dead, she dead.
Right.
And I was just like, that was a really crazy moment to me. And I didn't see that coming. And I want to give kudos to the writers, because I like that. I like being surprised. I don't like knowing exactly where things are going. With the previous episode, Sanctuary, I knew exactly what was going to happen. There were so many things in there that it was just like, it was so easy to know what was going to happen. And it's because of the way that they write in Hollywood now. And this was shocking to me. I was like, hey, this is different, because you don't see this, especially not in these kind of shows. So I was really surprised by that. I was really shocked by it, but in a good way, because I thought it was a neat twist. And it showed what kind of character he is. And like you said, he's not likable at all. And he really becomes unlikable at that point. He's a jerk. You know what I mean? He's a ruthless individual that cares only about himself, and is willing to do whatever it takes to advance his own reputation and advance himself. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then of course, what happens to him is fine. You know what I mean? I don't need to see him ever again. I agree with you. He's not a very compelling character. The Imperial Assassin was much more appealing and a character to me, but I like those kind of decisions, where you're willing to do something bold like that and surprise the audience. But I think the biggest thing that people are talking about of this episode, because like I said, I think this episode is very controversial. I think some people just absolutely love it, and there's other people that don't. I mean, they hate it. But the thing that everybody's talking about is that end scene.
Right.
At the very end, we see somebody is checking out the body of that assassin. And, this brings out all sorts of questions of who this person is. And there's all sorts of crazy theories. So I wanted to see if you have a theory on who that person is.
No, I don't really have a theory on who it is. Although there's a lot of people that really want to believe it's Boba Fett.
Right. That's one of the biggest ones. There's another big one. But the biggest one that was most shocking to me, because I didn't see that. I only saw that when I started going online and seeing people's reaction to the episode. Then I saw that people were saying that this is Boba Fett. And the big thing that they're doing is apparently they're taking the sound, the clinging sound of the armor, and they say it sounds exactly like the way Boba Fett sounds when he walks in Empire, like it's the same kind of clinging, which is like, okay, good ear on you, because I would never have picked that up. I would never have picked that up. I don't know. Did you pick up on that?
No, I didn't. But I saw a lot of speculation where people want it to be Boba Fett. I don't think that's who it is, by the way.
I don't either. I would love it.
A big theory on who it is, though.
If it was Boba Fett, I would love it. If it was Boba Fett, I would be so into it. I would be so excited if that was Boba Fett. You talk about a fan service or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm fine with just throwing Boba Fett in there, because I think it should. I said this from the beginning. This should have been Boba Fett from the beginning, in my personal opinion. That's one of my criticisms of this show, is that why not just have Boba Fett? But if Boba Fett is going to come in a different role, I think that'd be great. I think that'd be awesome. Now, the other big speculation that I think is more likely is, if you remember when we did our trailer review, there is there's a general, Imperial general. Apparently, he's actually a Moff. He's actually named. He's wearing the armor and everything, and he has Death Troopers. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, it's the same actor who's from Breaking Bad.
Right.
I don't remember the actor's name, but yeah. I could more likely see it being him.
So he is a Moff. Apparently, he's named. There's already a Wikipedia article on him. I looked into all this stuff. So he's already named, and he is a Moff. He's definitely an Imperial, no question. Okay, and he has Death Troopers, and a lot of people think it's him, which I think is more likely. But the question that I have is, in either scenario, why would they be checking on her? Because it seems to me, if somebody is checking on her, that means that they were going after her. And I would think it's someone from the guild. Someone else told me they think it's Carl Weathers' character, which I think makes a lot more sense because he is a member. He's obviously kind of runs the guild, and the guild was after this woman. And then what I'm wondering is if it's a guild member, whether it's Carl Weathers or someone else, or for that matter, we could speculate that Boba Fett is a member of the guild. My brother had this interesting theory that what if Boba Fett is a total freelancer and he doesn't have anything to do with the Mandalorian cult anymore, and he doesn't care about them, and he's a member of the guild, and that's what he does. Plus, my brother mentioned that with Boba Fett, he did work for the Empire, so that would imply also that maybe he's not someone looked upon favorably with the clan, with the Mandalorians, and he kind of just does his own thing, and he's more allied with the guild. So that's my big question. Sometimes I know I get into it too much because this is a live action cartoon. I don't know if they get that deep into it, but I question, why would this character be looking at her? To me, it means that they were specifically looking for her. And the two scenarios I have in my head is either it's a member of the guild, whether it be Boba Fett, Carl Weathers, or just some other new bounty hunter we're going to meet. Or if it is this Moff, it is this Imperial. The other scenario I thought of is she had mentioned that she was meeting people that were going to be paying her a lot of money to do something. And they mentioned that she worked for the Empire. So what if she was meeting the Moff, ironically, to go after the Mandalorian? That would be kind of a cool twist too, right? So we'll have to see. This, I think, is the most exciting part of the episode. People are really speculating about this, and I think it's fun to speculate. But those are the three I heard: either the Imperial Moff that we see in the trailer, Boba Fett, or Carl Weathers. And I tend to believe it's the Moff, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's what I tend to believe because, clearly whoever this is, they were looking for her, but I feel like they're going to find something or something's going to tip them off about the Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can think of. So, and like I said, I think that's probably the thing that people are most excited about from this episode is who is that mysterious stranger at the end of the episode.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I've seen the speculation on who it is on the internet. I don't at the top of my mind, I don't immediately have or can envision specifically who it is. I just don't have enough information, I think, to really make, for me to really get totally vested in trying to figure that out. But no, yeah, I mean, depending upon the direction, it could be interesting. Because we have an episode coming up that's supposed to tie into Rise of Skywalker some sort of way too.
Oh, that's right. The next episode is actually going to be on Wednesday, right?
I think it'll be the next one. I'm not 100% certain about that, but we are supposed to be somehow tying into Rise of Skywalker. So who knows at this point? I don't know.
No, you're right. I forgot about that. That's a good thing to mention because let me double check that. So we got the Rise of Skywalker, and of course now my calendar's not working. So all right, we've got another episode coming up on the 13th, right? And then there's going to be another episode on the 18th because the Rise of Skywalker comes out on the 19th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means before our next episode airs, there's going to be 2 episodes, depending on when the show comes on. Well, assuming they stick to their normal schedule of it comes out around 3 o'clock our time,
right?
3 a.m. our time.
Yeah.
That means that we're going to have we're going to be reviewing 2 episodes.
Right.
And one of them's just going to be on. That'd be cool. That's going to be good for the show, hopefully.
Yeah,
that'll help us with our reviews and stuff. So yeah, we're going to be reviewing 2 shows. You just reminded me. We're going to be reviewing 2 episodes, and The Rise of Skywalker is going to be coming out.
Yeah.
Within a day.
So that's what I'm saying in terms of speculating who this is, because we have to tie into Rise of Skywalker. I have no idea who that is. I don't really. I mean, but the one.
You don't recognize the boots? Are you seeing the image? Or that cape?
But see,
come on, give me something, Dave. Give me something. This is the funnest part of the episode.
I don't have any idea who it is. I don't have a clue. But I can tell you this: it's not the Emperor.
What if it is the Emperor?
No, because he should be lying low. I feel pretty confident it's not the Emperor, and I feel pretty confident it's not Jabba the Hutt. But
the Jabba the Hutt has different shoes. Clearly,
it's not Greedo either. I don't think it's Greedo.
I think it could be Greedo. I think Greedo. We can still.
I think Greedo's dead.
Wasn't Palpatine dead?
I don't know.
So I can totally be
it's
Greedo.
Greedo's clone. That's who it is. It's Greedo's clone. Clonito. But anyhow,
Clonito.
Yeah, Clonito, clone of Greedo. And he's here to take the child, which is actually a clone of Yoda, back to Kamino. They need him back at the testing grounds. But anyhow, no, I don't have any real speculation or theory, but I would assume it's got to somehow tie into Rise of Skywalker. They've got to find some way to do that. So it
would make sense that this particular character, since this is their first introduction to them.
Yeah,
I could see a scenario where like we actually see them like at the end of the next episode, we find out who that person was.
Yeah.
And then the next episode, the one that's going to be airing on Wednesday, that one is going to be like about that character. So that kind of sets up the Moff to me, and that this is going to set up the connection directly. My speculation is that Moff is loyal to the Emperor and not the First Order, not to Snoke, and he wants to bring the Emperor back, and he doesn't give a crap about the First Order.
Right.
That's my speculation.
Yeah, I could see that.
So I could see that scenario. I want it to be Boba Fett. I really want it to be Boba Fett, but that's what I think is going to happen is obviously we haven't seen that character yet.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have that many episodes left. We got 3 episodes left.
Yeah.
And so if they're going to tie it in to Rise of Skywalker, which they are, that's the only reason it has to tie in. That's why they're showing it on a Wednesday instead of the normal. That's why they're showing the second to last episode before Rise of Skywalker comes out. It has to be related.
Right.
So my thought is that we're going to see the Moff, and that the Moff is after the Baby Yoda, because like you said, the Baby Yoda is related to Yoda, whether it's offspring or clone. It's directly related to Yoda, not just a member of the race. And he's going to use it as sort of the battery to resurrect the Emperor. That's my thought.
Okay, we'll see.
Or literally, he'll be the little battery on Palpatine's spider mechanism.
Yeah,
that's a little Baby Yoda attached there.
I think that's what he'll be. He'll be the battery. The weird spider mechanism that Palpatine is riding around on. So,
whoever the character is, I just hope it's cool. I hope it's a compelling character. I have high hopes for this Moff character and the Death Troopers. If they make the Death Troopers lame, I'm really going to be angry. I'm going to really be angry if they make the Death Troopers incompetent, pathetic. We're finally getting Death Troopers back, and I want to see them like kick the Mando's ass or something. So I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, lots of people have done that so far.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Except the Stormtroopers,
the
veteran Stormtroopers who he annihilated like nothing.
Which we're still not convinced they were veteran Stormtroopers. But, like I said, I've enjoyed The Mandalorian. I like this episode just fine. It just wasn't one of my favorites. That's all. So, and it's just because I didn't buy the Gunslinger kid. I mean, he just felt like a Backstreet Boy is the best way to put it.
I agree with you.
He
I
just
agree
felt
with
like
you.
he was dropped in and he didn't fit in at all. And he didn't have that sometimes fun Star Warsy and like distinguishing thing, that very clearly puts him in the world of Star Wars and takes him out of our world. You know what I mean? He just seemed too contemporary. So, but yeah, that's my complaint. Like I said, I didn't hate the episode, but it's not one of my favorites either. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm kind of with you, but I like the little twist. I like the fact that he killed the assassin girl. I didn't see that coming. I like to be surprised, and I am also interested in who this unseen character is. I like, you know, I'm okay with the cliffhanger in the middle of a show. So as long as I'm going to get some resolution and find out who that is, hopefully by the next episode, I'm cool with it. And I am, like everybody else out there, I'm speculating hardcore about who it is. I think it's going to be the Moff. I would love it to be Boba Fett. We'll just have to see.
sounds cool. All right, do we think we're good then?
I think we are good.
Okay, all right.
Hold on, just let me get rid of this banner. There we go.
All right, cool. So I want to thank you for either watching or listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. You can learn more about me. You can see lots of my art and illustration, all that kind of fun stuff on my website. And that's at davebeatty.com. That's www.davebeaty.com. There's also sketches, all kinds of fun things on there. Definitely check it out. I want to thank Eric Alexander for being back. Well, obviously, be back as co-host. I got to figure out a different way to segue. But obviously, thanks, Eric, for being on the show and bringing your insight and all the fun things that you had for the news segments and everything. That's really cool to get to discuss all that. And you help me be informed. So please tell the people either watching or listening at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter, and I'm at BaseGod14, which you can see in the corner of my screen, BASSGOD14, and that is Bass God, not Bass God. I used to play bass guitar. And then also that is the same for my YouTube channel, which I am hosting this on my YouTube, as well as my Twitter, and then also on the Retro Retrospective Facebook page. So we're multi-streaming on all three platforms. You can find me there. And then always please keep in mind my company, Bad Bob Productions.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that you're not the almighty Lord of Fishing?
No, I am not the almighty Lord of Fishing.
Oh, man, I've been so confused all this time.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
All right.
Get that a lot.